What's happening, everybody? We're going to do a live stream tonight with my friend Tuning by James, and he's on standby. He should be here any minute. I haven't done a lot of live stream on this channel in a while because I don't know, just I really haven't been into doing this that much like I used to. But this StreamYard live streaming has become somewhat popular, and I thought I'd give it a try and bring my friend on to answer any questions you guys might have. So if anybody's anybody's out there, come on in, drop your comments, say hello. I see 7 people are watching, so drop your comments, man. Come on into the stream. All right, GT Garage, what's happening? Jovios, haven't seen you in a while. What's going on, brother? And John Quinto, how's it going, man? Okay, so guys, like I say, this stream is going to be a Q&A with my friend James from Tuning by James, and I'm going to bring him into the stream now. Here he is. What's going on, James?
Hey, Al, how you doing?
Pretty good, pretty good. Yeah, so we're off and running with this StreamYard. It's the first time I've done this on this channel, and I thought about bringing you in to talk tuning. Why not?
Awesome.
I mean, you've been my tuner. I've seen you tune a lot of cars. I've seen you make a lot of power, and you know, you've done justice by me. I mean, when you tuned my car, we were on the dyno for more than 10 hours. You revised the tune 15 times. You got a lot of power out of it, and you did a good job. You know, so you tuned for Steeda too. I think everybody who's watching, if isn't already aware of that, this is to your credit. You tuned for Dario Orlando over there in Steeda. And,
Sure.
you know, I met Dario, and he's a nice guy. And my feeling about him is that he's not going to hire the wrong guy to do tuning on all of his new cars, right? Those bullets, the Q 500s and 600s and all of the special edition cars that he builds and sells to the public. You're writing tunes that are of factory quality in terms of its fuel efficiency and drivability and power delivery, and all of the things that go into tuning a car from a factory standpoint. I mean, tuning can be brute power at the drag strip just to go down the track, and tuning could be both, you know, drivability and max power, reasonable power. You know, there's all different from what I mean. My layman's perspective of tuning is that you know, most of us just want drivability and good power out of the car, but some of us want just tons of power. Give it to me. So you know,
it's funny. You reminded me of a story. One of the first cars that I was tuning for Steeda, officially after starting my own business, was a 2005 Ford GT supercar with a Whipple supercharger on it. And Dario decided to go for the test drive himself. Oh, we got one of my cats showing up. This is Sochi. I named my cats after Formula One tracks.
So James, how many cats do you have?
Now I think we're up to 14.
14 cats.
14. Yeah.
Well, you're a better man than me. I have 1.
Yeah. It's funny, this house we bought, one of the selling features of the house was that it had its own litter box room. Somebody converted a room off the back of the house, just add a couple extra square feet to it, and it's perfect for having all of our litter boxes. So
that's good.
But yeah, so you know, Dario decided to go for the test drive with me, and I'm expecting, you know, oh my God, he's going to go and do this super wide open throttle pull or whatever. And, you know, we get on the turnpike, and I'm expecting him to, you know, we're on the on ramp, and I'm expecting him to really nail on it. He goes first, second, third, fourth, fifth, and he puts it to the wood in 5th gear at like 1,500 RPMs. I'm like, what is that? And he's like, well, anybody can tune for high RPM. I wanted to know if this thing was going to buck or chug or do, you know, it's a different level of expectation, basically. You know, anybody can tune a car for wide open throttle for high RPM. It's more about drivability and getting making sure that it's a complete calibration, not just the wide open throttle stuff with Steeda. It really helps keep me, it pushes my my level of expectation of myself. So it's
yeah. Well, one thing that was impressive that you and I talked about a couple of years ago was that you were the one that was tuning on the Silver Bullet, which was Steeda's fastest NA 2018 Mustang there for a while, and that
yes.
You were the guy doing all the tuning on it as you were as they were breaking records with it back then.
Yes.
And that's to your credit. And how fast? I mean, that car was fast. Has that car is in the 9s or has it gotten in the 8s? Where
they're running 9s now with it. They eventually switched to using Lund for it, but they want to do trans brake and do all sorts of other stuff with it. But yeah, when I was tuning it, I was the first to go 10s. We had that car running 1060 something at 130 in the quarter mile with basically bolt-ons. A couple little things, but it didn't have the light windows. It didn't have the deck lid or anything like that. It was all, just stock car with long tubes, E85. At that point, I think it had the Cobra jet on it.
Mm-hmm.
So, but
all right. So I'll take the moment to say hello to everybody. I can't. It's hard for me to type and engage in conversation at the same time. But got some people in here. We got the Wolf, Steve Mustang 516, Alex K. All of you guys haven't seen you in a while. Haven't been live in a while. Chovios, GT Garage, John Quinto. It's nice to have you guys come in here. I haven't gone live in a while, so a lot of. I mean, I haven't really even been doing anything with my car lately, and I know that a lot of people are a part of my channel because of my car. I haven't really been doing all that much with it lately. The last time I had it out at the track, I ended up blowing the rear end. I changed the rear end. And then we got into the summer and COVID hit, and it's like everything is kind of upside down right now. And I haven't been at the track. I do plan to get there at some point so that we can showcase, James's tune, because really my car is James's build. When the engine went bad in early 2019, a lot of what I needed to do and what I decided to do came on James's advice, because I was like a fish out of water. I really wasn't sure what direction to go in. And between James and some other people who commented on the channel, I got a lot of help from a lot of people. But on the most part, I owe the build on my car to James, and we're really just getting started. I'm still on pump gas, right, with a little bit of boosting, putting 800 to the wheels, without even an upgraded fuel system. I'm running on a stock fuel system with a.
I think that was one of your main focuses with that car, was you didn't want to go putting additional fuel lines and rails and regulators and hooking up all sorts of craziness to it. You just wanted as much as you could do with the stock lines.
Yeah. My goal was to push the 93 octane package as far as I could. And when we were on the dyno, and I had given you permission to throw timing at it, just keep throwing timing at it. I had enough boosting in it to get it to about 100 octane. And with my permission to do something seemingly somewhat risky, but turned out to not be so risky. We didn't see knock sensor activity until we got over 800 horsepower. And at that point, you backed off and said, here we are. There's no point going any further. But
well, I think that was it. Yeah, I don't even think we were looking to make 800. I would have been happy with, 7.25, 750. But as I'm tuning the car, I'm one of the guys who I like to listen to the car. I like to let the car tell me where it wants to go. And it's just one of those things where the car was telling me that it wasn't done yet. So, I'm going to keep going until you tell me to stop, or until the car tells me to stop. One of two things. So,
and one advantage that we had was that my car, my engine is not stock. I don't have the stock hyper-eutectic pistons in it.
Right.
So with forged pistons and end gaps that end gaps on the rings that are there, designed to work with boost, you can take a little bit more risk knowing that you're not going to break a ringland because the engine's built for boost. It's not just a stock engine.
It's not, the ringlands are part of it, but more than anything, what I think the big issue with the stock Coyote engines is the ring end gap. So when the rings are on the piston, they're set up for a naturally aspirated engine. So when you start putting boost to it, especially on a stock Whipple calibration, as the stock fan temperature is at 230 degrees, those end gaps, they close up. And once you get to zero gap, the ring starts binding in the cylinder, and it has nowhere else to go. So it starts scoring the cylinders and causing damage.
All right, James. So we got a little question here up on screen. GT Garage says he's got an 18 full bolt-on Lund tune, does not burn very much oil between oil changes, but I did notice that after warming up the car for a bit, when put into gear, it would puff smoke that came out. And then he continues on to say, smells like oil. Any idea what's going on there? And does not do it again until after a cold start. One thing, I just want to make a comment to somebody before we go into questions with James, is that we're not here to bash any of the other tuners.
No.
I use a lot of tuners. I'll be honest with you. I've used Lund. I've used actually, I shouldn't say that. I should say I use Lund. I still use Lund. I have another build that I'm working on that I haven't revealed to anybody, that I plan to probably work with Lund on that one. James is my tuner for the orange car, and will be until I'm done with it and to decide either to get rid of it or just leave it. But we're not here to bash anybody, because the other tuners are good. Those are good tuners. There's nothing wrong with any of these other guys. I'm here with James because he's my friend, and he's done some really good things for me, and he tunes for Dario Orlando at Steeda. So to his credit, you could ask him some questions, and you could be sure you get some really good answers from him. So James, this question that came from GT Garage, got anything to offer on that one?
Yeah, that's kind of a tough one, because you've got a puff of smoke, but what color is it? How does it present? Does the car have catalytic converters on it? You could have any number of things going on there. I mean, you got valve seals going bad, but I mean, on a 2018, it's pretty rare. I haven't actually heard of too many people having valve seal issues or anything like that. You could have a hurt motor. I mean, there's, at this point, with that much information, it's very difficult to, being that it only happens on cold start, I would have a feeling that it has something to do with catalytic converters, or the lack thereof, and the fact that it's not burning oil. It doesn't sound to me like anything too serious is going on there. Did he say whether he was on 93 or E85?
He didn't say. My first instinct, when somebody tells me they got a puff of smoke on startup, first thing I ask him is if he's got an oil separator. That's the first thing.
Yeah.
I know somebody locally that had an oil separator on their car that was hooked up wrong. And
oh yeah, if you get it hooked up wrong, you'll get all sorts of stuff going on.
All sorts of
we got another car, huh?
All sorts of bad things. I mean, if it's hooked up reversed, you're sucking oil instead of pulling it out.
We've got a car we got an EcoBoost Mustang that I just finished tuning with a big turbo on it, and big injectors and fuel pump, and his seals failed in the turbo. So he had one of those big turbos on it. The seals failed, and it was just killing mosquitoes right and left. And we told the guy, your seals on your turbo is bad. He drove it for a month like that. So what happens is, when they finally fixed the turbo, and he's got the mufflers, I forget exactly what they were, but it was a large body muffler, and they were just saturated with oil. So here we are with the brand new turbo on it, and everything data looks good, and it's just pouring smoke out the back of the car during pulls. And it's like, we ran a compression, a leak down, everything passed. And it, luckily after, I want to say about 4 or 5 pulls, it started getting better. It started clearing up, but his mufflers were saturated with oil. So there's just nothing you can do at that point except for get them cleared out.
Yeah.
So.
Another interesting thing that you had mentioned to me was that when you were tuning for SCT, and by the way, I should have mentioned this to you guys who's watching. James tuned for SCT for a number of years before he went off on his own. And during that time that he was there, Koenigsegg, okay, and just, by the way, I'm piecing together a video of a 2008 Koenigsegg, which has a 4.6 32 valve engine in it, a Ford engine that's been reworked to 4.7 liters with all forged internals and some other cool things. The thing is, and it's got twin superchargers on it, twin belt-driven centrifugal superchargers. James, when working for SCT, was working with the SCT team to come up with a tune file for that car, and that I find that very interesting.
It was more, I don't want to overplay it too much, but yeah, I mean, it was more like supporting the, those guys over at Koenigsegg are absolutely phenomenal. Those guys are brilliant. And it was more trying to just assist and help them get what they needed to make sure that they had the tools that they needed to tune the car to do what they wanted to do. Let's see, free-flowing exhaust.
And he says he's on the 85.
Okay. What did he say? The cats? I didn't catch all of that.
Free-flowing exhaust is what he says. You know what that means, James? Okay.
Free-flowing exhaust. Yeah. So, if there's nothing there.
All right. James's bandwidth is kind of freezing up on him. Yeah, so we kind of know what free-flowing exhaust means. The only question that I would have for you, GT Garage, is could you describe the color of that smoke? Because with E85, that would be an important bit of information. James is probably going to end up coming back in. And you have no oil separators. You're venting to the atmosphere. Okay. That's very interesting. If you've got smoke on E85 and you don't have an oil separator, that does lead me to think it's a mechanical issue. All right, James. All right. So
am I back?
Yeah.
You got me?
Yeah. What happened?
I don't know. My screen just went black, like it dropped signal or internet or something, but it just came back. So
GT Garage is got long tubes. He's on the 85, and he says he doesn't have an oil separator. He says it here. Yeah. So he's venting to the atmosphere.
Well, venting to atmosphere from the PCV valves and remove the passenger side plunger. See, and this is one of those things. I am not a big fan of venting to atmosphere. Everybody seems to be doing it, and one of the things that with a PCV system, it's not just about recirculating and emissions and whatever. Using a PCV system, you're pulling vacuum through the crankcase. Now, this does a few things. Number one, putting the crankcase under a vacuum helps pull the piston rings out to the cylinder walls to help seal, and you get a little better compression. So it's very possible that could be related there. If you're not, now, of course, the PCV isn't going to put that much because you got the breather on the other side, but there is a relationship there. So getting that PCV system, disconnecting the PCV system, you've got nothing there to evacuate those vapors from the crankcase. You're relying on the pressure in the crankcase to evacuate everything. So the PCV system, in my opinion, is actually a very important system just for any engine. You want a PCV. Now you want the catch can on it so that you're not getting all of those oil vapors in the intake tube, but you want to pull a vacuum on the crankcase so that your cylinders seal properly. You're not just accumulating vapors inside the crankcase. You need movement of air through the crankcase to clear things
James,
out.
would you suggest that he put an oil separator on it and hook up his PCV?
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely, on every car I do, we use the PCV, and the recommended setup would be a PCV valve with the breather and everything hooked up the way it was from the factory, only catch cans either on the one side or both, depending on whether it's supercharged or not.
Okay, GT Garage, I hope that was helpful. My car is set up that way. I got an oil separator and a PCV valve on it. And you know what? I think that maybe it would be worth a try for you to hook yours up that way, just to make sure that you've got the negative pressure on the crankcase, to make sure you're drawing everything out of it, because you might be pushing some oil past your valve seals. That would be my guess. My limited experience, that would be my guess. But so Mario Aguila, if I said that right, I think I did, ask a question. It's got a stage 2 and had the same luck you had with the stock motor, and he's got a built short block non-sleeved, forged rods and pistons, asking about longevity at 850 wheel horsepower. What do you think about that, James?
What fuel? And did he change the compression?
Okay. So Mario, post up your answers on that.
And then the next question is going to be what tune. Everybody seems to get down on the Whipple tune. I don't necessarily think the Whipple tune is as bad as everybody says it is. There's just one aspect of it that I really don't like, and that's their fan settings. And the thing that we need to remember is that there's a difference between a Whipple calibration and an aftermarket calibration. In a Whipple calibration, they have to make sure that that vehicle is 50 state legal. It's cold start. It's, like the federal government, they mandate that a catalytic converter lights off within 8 seconds of starting the car. So Whipple has to meet those same standards. If you're just taking your car in for emissions once a year, they're not checking to that level of standards. So from a manufacturer standpoint, there are certain things that they have to do, and it has to be certified that way. So their hands are kind of tied with doing things like changing fan temp settings. And this goes back to what we've already talked about a couple of times, those the ring end gaps. The hotter you run the engine, the tighter the ring end gaps get. So the first thing that I do in an aftermarket Whipple calibration is drop the fan temps down to something a little more reasonable. But keep in mind, I'm not talking, there's people out there who will run a 170, 160, 150 degree thermostat. I haven't seen a 150 yet, but you get what I'm saying. They want to run the coldest thermostat they can. Their opinion is, well, if a little bit is good, a lot of it is better. So they're going to run that thermostat as cold as they possibly can. But what a lot of people don't realize is the colder you go, yes, you start to get into this window where knock resistance is better, the ring end gaps are much happier, your longevity is improved. But once you start getting below 180 degrees, your engine wear starts increasing exponentially. So like the difference between 200 to 190 and then 190 to 180, your engine wear doubles. And then from 180 to 170, it doubles again. So
yeah, so I stopped at 170. I took the 180 degree thermostat out of my car. I went to 170 and I stopped right there.
On a supercharged car, like a 18 and up, a 12-to-1 compression with a Whipple supercharger. I'll run a 170 thermostat, but I'll run the fans to maintain about 185 or so. So it will still get the knock resistance, but it'll still give you a nice long service life of the engine. What do you think about the new 2021? I'm interested in a 10-speed Mach 1 as a daily driver, but want to put full bolt-ons. See, now here's the thing, and a lot of people, I don't know if they know, I was one of the first to tune the 2019 bullets. I do the Steve McQueen calibrations for the naturally aspirated bullets, and I absolutely love it. There's people out there, and it seems to be what ended up happening is everybody was putting a GT350 manifold on the Gen 2 Coyotes. It was a big thing. A GT350 manifold is great, and then the 18 comes out, and people realized, well, the GT350 manifold is like $1,100-$1,200. The 18 manifold is like $350. It's a much easier sell for a $350 manifold than a $1,200 manifold. So everybody started getting, and I'm not calling anybody out, I'm not going to say anything, but everybody started getting on this 18 manifold train. And oh, it's just as good as a GT350. Well, if you don't tune them any different, if you tune them the same, they're going to run about the same. I do specific calibrations for every intake manifold that I do. And even back then, I was noting that the 18 manifold versus the GT350, the GT350 was worth 20 horsepower on a car with proper mods, with the correct, like a Cook's long tube, good fuel, good cold air kit. We're getting 20 horsepower over an 18 manifold. I've done it over and over and over. And then the Bullet comes out, and I'm like, it's got a GT350 intake manifold. And look, Ford rates it 20 horsepower higher than a GT. And I'm like, it in my opinion, the Bullet setup with the GT350 manifold, throttle body, and cold air is a phenomenal setup. So now we've got the Mach 1 coming out. The only thing the Bullet was missing was the A10 automatic. And because the A10 automatic, the huge advantage of an A10 automatic is when you go to shift gears, if you look at a dyno sheet, you'll see up at the top end of the dyno sheet, you've got this curve to the horsepower, right? So at any point, if you shift the car, you shift it, let's say your power, you hit a peak of, let's just use 450, for example, right? Well, you're not going to make 450 all the time. You're going to 430, 440, 450, and then it's going to start falling off to 440, 430. So what happens is when you shift that car, it's going to drop, in a typical 6R80 or something, it's going to drop like 1,500 RPMs, depending on the transmission, depending on the car, depending on where you're shifting. You're going to drop anywhere from 1,500 to 2,000 RPMs. And that means that you've got to stretch your RPMs 750 RPMs past peak, which your horsepower is dropping. And then after the shift, you're 750 RPMs before peak. Well, on the 10R80 car, you only have to stretch it 500 RPMs in either way. So you're much closer to peak before the shift, and you're much closer to peak after the shift. So you're not where with a 6R80, you would have been dropping to 440 or 430 before the shift and 430 after the shift. With a 10R80 car, you're 440 before the shift, 440 after the shift. So your average horsepower throughout a gear is much higher than it was. So now that you've got basically the Bullet engine setup with the 10R80, I think it's going to be a phenomenal. I think with just tuning E85 and possibly long tubes, you'll be running 10s easy.
Okay, so 50 Primo, who's actually a friend of mine, James. He's got a TVS 2650 on his 19 Mustang. I believe
Okay.
that's a 10-speed car, and he put a chiller on it. Okay,
Okay.
he's one of the people that's been watching and paying attention to the effects of the tuner. Excuse me, the chiller. Something that James can shed a lot of light on, because when we were tuning my car on the dyno, when we went stage 2 with the chiller, there was a lot of information that came from those data logs that James has in his database.
Yeah.
So that's what Primo 50 is working with right now. He's still on the Roush tune. He's got the Roush, like, it's a Roush blow.
Yeah.
It's the one that I think
What year is it?
a 19.
19? Okay.
Maximum, I don't know what throttle body he has on it, but I think maximum on that setup is a 90, if I'm not mistaken. But he has a pretty interesting question. Do tuners take upgraded mods into consideration when tuning typical bolt-ons?
And that's actually a really good question, and because it leads into the distinction between an email tune and a custom tune. And a lot of times people don't know the difference, or their tuner isn't explaining the difference, or whatever. A lot of the tuners out there, they like to do, and look, I'll be honest with you, sometimes I'm the same. I tell you, this is the setup that I like to see because this is what works. I know this works. Now, Al, you come to me with a killer chiller, and to be honest with you, I've known about the killer chiller for over a decade. I mean, it's been that, that mythical unicorn that everybody talks about, but nobody actually has, right? And you, I think, were one of the first, coyotes with a killer chiller that I've actually seen actually come in and want to get custom tuned. It's
Right.
a really good idea, and it's different than everybody else. And that's exactly what a lot of people don't get is, if you use the same setup as everybody else, you're only ever going to be as fast as everybody else. You're never going to beat anybody, right? So everybody wants to be unique, but the tuners don't like unique because they can't guarantee that the tune file that they send out for this is going to be the same for that. And I mean, even long tube headers, with me, there's tuners out there that say you don't even need a tune for long tube headers. I have specific tunes even for different brand long tube headers, because the length and the diameter of the tube and the way that header behaves is different between manufacturers. If you go back, Al, you'll probably know this, back in the old school days when people were running big block Chevys and Ford FEs, and they would have long tube headers, and their long tube headers had collectors that you could actually separate. They were slip-on collectors, and they would have 5 different sets of collectors that had different lengths to them. And you would actually tune the length of the header based on the power band, based on your camshaft, based on the track that you're running, or whatever the altitude is. They would actually tune the exhaust system for the performance, and then they would have to rejet the carburetor and change their curve of their distributor to match what they're doing. I mean, it was a whole black art how they would go about all this stuff.
So James, more to the point of Primo 50's question, taking upgraded mods into consideration when tuning other than typical bolt-ons, I think what he might be referring to is the killer chiller in his case.
Yeah. Well, in the case of the killer chiller, it's kind of interesting because to a certain extent, you don't need to tune for it. And I mean, I say that, and it's kind of a, I need to elaborate on that statement a little bit, because in the computer takes air charge temperature into consideration. So what does a killer chiller do? It changes the air charge temp. Now, when I go to tune a car, I'm tuning the car with a given air charge temp, whatever temperature that air is when it enters the cylinder, that's what I'm tuning around. Now I'm optimizing the car for whatever temperature it is, right? Now, if you put a killer chiller on it, it's obviously going to drop your air charge temps, right? Hopefully. I mean, that's the whole reason you're buying it, right? So if it drops your air charge temps 20, 30 degrees, you're going to get more timing. The computer is already calibrated with a specific curve to that temperature range where it's going to alter the ignition timing based on the air charge temp. Now, the difference is going to be if you don't have the killer chiller on, and I tune it for that, and then you put the killer chiller on, yes, the computer is automatically going to compensate, but is it perfect? And that curve is going to be correct for a stock vehicle, or for whatever it's set up. If it was a supercharged file, it'll be stock. It'll be good for a supercharged vehicle, but it may not be absolutely perfect. And that's what we did with your car, was we dialed in everything specific to your application, and we were able to spend the time, work with it, and make sure that every detail, I mean, like, it'll automatically compensate. So you can write a tune. If you just have a supercharged tune, you can write that tune and it'll work whether you have a killer chiller or not. But if you actually spend the time and tweak it and work with it, like, for example, I might be able to run the cams at a slightly different setup with a killer chiller on the car than I can without a killer chiller, because it's a different it's a different temperature. I can run the cylinder pressures depending on the fuel, depending on the temperature, depending on where you live. If you're in Colorado versus Florida, hot, humid versus cold and dry, setups are going to be a little bit different. It should self-compensate, but tuning it to optimize for, rather than just here's a tune that will work, right?
So Primo 50, to answer your question, the answer is yes. If your car is on the dyno and it's got a killer chiller on it, whatever James sees in terms of downstream is probably going to be more consistent with your car than a car that's subjected to ambient temperature. Blow a car with an intercooler on it, really downstream is subject to how efficient your heat exchanger and your intercooler is. If you've got a chiller on it and it's consistently, 80-degree downstream, regardless of what the temperature is ambient, not only is your car going to be more consistent at the track, but this is something that James is going to see in the data logs as he starts to, set up his calibration for the car. So yeah.
Usually once we get into custom modifications like that, I switch from being more of a mail order tune to being more of a custom remote tune type scenario.
So James, GT Garage is answering a question that I asked him. He's on E85. He's got free-flowing exhaust, and he's not, he's vented to the atmosphere. It's crankcase, and he says that the smoke is whitish and smells like an oil. So
I mean, it may be oil. It may be a ring or didn't he say he did a compression, a leak down on it in the past?
I don't know. I didn't see that.
Yeah, but I'd be interested to see the leak down results on it, to see just when you say it passed. It's kind of like an alignment. People do the alignment. It's green and go, right? If everything's within spec, but your left side is to the most positive of spec and your left side is to the more negative of spec. Just because it's green doesn't necessarily mean it's good. You could have something that's, got a little scoring on one of the cylinders, and that could be, mixed with the PCV not hooked up. Could absolutely cause a problem.
So my friend Mike, truck. By the way, Mike, thanks again for helping me out with my computer. Mike's an IT guy. He knows all about computers, and I really needed somebody to help me out because this computer that I'm on, the camera and the mic wouldn't work. I couldn't figure out for the life of me why. As it turns out, there's safety devices. You have to press Fin and F7 to get the camera to go on. That's a safety device in this computer to combat the malware that hijacks your computer and turns your camera on, right? and photographs you and then blackmails you into buying their system to clear that up. Years ago, I ran into that problem. I had to buy malware bytes, which captures all the malware, but this computer had a safety device in it, and Mike helped me out how to figure out how to use it. So thanks a lot, Mike, for that. And Mike talks about he's got a Whipple. Stupid Fast Truck has got one of the nicest F-150 trucks. Got a 2.9 Whipple on it.
Cool.
Makes good power, and he's done a ton of upgrades to it in a lot of other areas. But he asked a question about his shift points. It looks like the shift points are low.
And that's probably, you know, when you go, another thing with the Whipple tunes is, again, it's kind of a one size fits all, has to meet X, Y, and Z. This is what happens when you get the suits involved with dictating your calibrations. There's probably too many rules on what they're doing. It's not necessarily that the guys at Whipple don't know how to tune a shift schedule. It's that the rules are such that they can't modify it the way that they want to. You know, with Ford, you know, the shifts are so squishy and so soft. It's not because they can't or they don't want to. It's that the lawyers come in and say, well, you have to have a nice soft shift, because if it shifts too firm, grandma's going to put that Mach 1 Mustang in a ditch. You can't give grandma the same kind of shift that you give to an experienced race driver, right? So, or an 18-year-old kid, you know, that high school kid that just wants all the horsepower and he's got the money to get it. So, you know, but he's going to put the car in a ditch because he doesn't have the experience. So things like shift schedules and whatnot, they can a lot of times be very personal. I had one customer, he absolutely wanted to have a unique shift schedule for his Raptor. I worked with this guy, and it was the same deal. I was like, yeah, I can do whatever you want. I worked with this guy for over a year on a shift schedule for his truck, and he loved it. Everything was great. He was having, I mean, he paid for it. I mean, every time he would kick me a couple of bucks and I'd make some adjustments to it. But I was making like half a mile an hour adjustments at this throttle position, at this, you know, and on this shift, I need this, and on this shift at this pedal. I mean, just the most microscopic changes to make this guy happy. And then I thought, oh my God, I got this great file. I'm going to send this to everybody. And I went to send it to somebody else, and they were like, oh my God, this shift schedule is god awful. I hate it. Give me the, put it back. So yeah, I mean, shift schedules are something you need to customize.
Right. So a custom tune really is kind of where he's at. If he's working with the Whipple tune, some custom tuning, and the request for that, you tell your tuner that that's what you want, and then the tuner will work on it and change that.
And you got to, a lot of that, you got to be specific. And these newer cars, they're not easy to do a shift schedule. There's certain years that there's multiple shift schedule tables, and there's tables for the transmission, and then tables for the torque converter, and it's not in RPMs anymore. It's not in RPMs. It's not even in vehicle speed. They're doing everything based on output shaft speed. So you're looking at a table and you're like, well, what is 698? And this shift is 1242, and this, it's not any number that would make sense to any reasonable person. I've had to build spreadsheets and everything to convert those numbers and make it something that you can look at and work with. But yeah, if you give me specifics, details, give me the little, I need to know everything. And yeah, I can tweak stuff, but I need to know it's a problem. You need to tell me that I'm not happy with this. Can you please adjust it? And I'll do my best to work it out.
You know, that's a very interesting point. Tuning, from what I know from other tuners, I follow other tuners on YouTube, and the biggest thing is communication between the end user and the tuner. You got to relay to your tuner, you know, what it is you're trying to get at this. If there's something that you want, if there's something that you don't like with the tune that you have, give the tuner as much advance notice, like from the start. Tell them, okay, you're going to tune my car. This is what I want. Be specific. Think it through. Think about it for a while before you talk to your tuner, because the most information you give him from the beginning, the better job he's going to do. And then the less sort of revisions you might have to do. You get a tune, I don't like it, I expected this. Well, the thing is to tell your tuner in advance what you expect so that he gets it right the first time, but a second time instead of having to go back over and over again.
Yeah.
Life as a tuner is not easy. I mean, it's tough. I know how it is for you guys. And, you know, it's communication is a very important thing.
There's a lot of information in a calibration. And I see a new question come up, but I wanted to kind of elaborate real quick.
Yeah.
When I go to do a tune, like there's mail order tunes, there's remote tuning, and then there's dyno tuning. And to give you an example of a dyno tune, a typical dyno tune that I do, I'll bring the car in, we put it on a dyno, and I do what I call the mathematical phase of tuning, which is you put the engine, you put it in a gear, you do a pull, and I look at the data and I follow the data and I let the vehicle tell me where it wants to go and I work the tune. There is a mathematical right and wrong. There is a sweet spot for getting the most horsepower out of a vehicle. I work the entire curve, not just high-end horsepower, but I'll work the low-end torque. I'll get everything I can everywhere, not just at the top end. That is there is a right and a wrong, and you have to keep working it. This isn't the customer's preference. This is, you know, in order to get the power, this is what you have to do. Now, once I'm done with that, then we pull the car off the dyno. The customer gets behind the wheel. I get in the passenger seat. I data log it while the owner is driving it, and they give me feedback on, well, this is good, but if it could shift sooner or shift later or harder, softer, or whatever. You know, I'll put like my basic file that I like in there, but what I like, somebody said it years and years ago, reading a hot rod magazine or something, talking about RV cams. Well, your idea of a recreational vehicle and my idea of a recreational vehicle may be two completely different things. So that the shift schedule and all that kind of stuff, throttle response, the pedal mapping and stuff, that becomes very user subjective. You know, how you want your vehicle to work. So
T. Hetzler is another guy, sort of a YouTube friend of mine. We kind of talk in other live streams around the web with some other people that we're hanging out with. He wants to have your contact info put up.
Yeah.
T, what I'm going to do once I close out this live stream, this is going to stay up on the channel, and in the comment section is going to be contact info for James. But you could catch him on his Facebook, right? Tuning by James.
Yeah. Well, there's three main ways. You got my phone number, 407-744-1881. You got my email address, which is james@tuningbyjames.com. And then my Facebook page, which is Tuning by James LLC. So those are three main. I do have a website, but it actually belongs more in a museum at this point. I haven't had the time to update my website in years. And then basically what I usually ask people, if you just need questions, you can call me, you can whatever. But once we get to the point where I need to review your vehicle, if you're sending me, hey, I got a whatever that I want you to tune, the best thing to do is put it in an email and email me. And that way I can look at it. I'm not driving my car at the time and trying to read while I'm driving or trying. Yeah. If I need to analyze and look parts up and, oh my God, you're using a what? You know, it helps me if everything is in an email. And then if you come in for a dyno tune, if we move forward and you come in for a dyno tune, I can take that email, copy and paste everything into a notepad or the invoice or whatever, and I can have all of that information there to look at while I'm tuning that vehicle. Because a lot of times you'll come in and I talked to you 2 months ago and I've tuned 20, 30 cars since then. I don't remember. So having that information in an email is usually the best way. Okay.
So James's contact info will be in the comment section. Once I close out the video, I'll go there and type it in. I have a comment on the screen here from Heather. Heather is actually, she's a special kid to me because She was my 5,000 subscriber. I was at 499.
Oh, wow.
4,999 for like 3 days. And then I see it go to 5,000. I see a comment come up from her that she subscribed. And so again, Heather, thank you for that. I'll always remember that. And
Awesome.
Heather lives in Michigan, right? So it's cold up there, and she's saying that it's cold. Okay. And some other people are saying that it's cold. I mean, really, what's going on around the rest of the country? It's pretty cold, and we're not cold. Actually, we got a little heat wave today. Today we're up to 86 degrees. I got the windows closed and the air conditioning on. Actually, I wish it was.
I just got back from Central Florida, and we were expecting it to be cold, and it wasn't.
Yeah, so I mean, it's nice here, no doubt about it, compared to the rest of the country. But we have to deal with the heat pretty much all year round, even in the wintertime, because we had a snap of cool weather in January, the last part of December, but February hasn't been all that great. It's been warm, and I hope we get some more cool weather before it starts getting hot in March and April. So
here and minus 14 in Colorado. I spent 10 years in Colorado. I know what weather in Colorado is like.
So Desmond, who has a car that you tuned, James, I think you tuned his Bullet, right?
Yeah, and he was part of the when we were working on the Steve McQueen strategies to get that file worked out. I wanted, when we put a tune file into production, I want to make sure that it's not just a one and done. I'm not just tuning one car. So we did a calibration in Florida. We did a couple of them, and I had Desmond works with a friend of mine's shop, 210 Performance in Texas. He's right around the corner from them, and he brought the car into them, and I worked with them doing tuning with them, and we were able to take that Steve McQueen file that I was working on, and on a different dyno in a different area in a different climate. And I actually found a few things working on his calibration that I put into the final files. It was absolutely a awesome help to have his car involved there. Made a big difference to the final calibrations.
Yep.
So especially at the very high end, the very top end of the power band, repeated pulls when you're getting that temperature on it.
Yeah. All right. So Mario, he asked the question of, he's got a forged short block like I do, and he's got a Whipple Stage 2, and he asked about 850 to the wheels. Is that safe? And you want to know what kind of fuel and what compression. So he's E85 and 12-to-1, which
with E85. The big thing with E85 in terms of longevity is don't store the car. E85 is a great fuel. I love it. There's nothing wrong with running E85. The new pumps, hoses, anything built nowadays should be ethanol compatible. Any of the cars, the fuel injectors and everything, they're all compatible with ethanol. The only problem with running E85 is you don't want to store it. It doesn't have the same shelf life that gasoline does. Not that gasoline has the best shelf life, but if you're driving your car and putting it away for the winter, or you're a snowbird and you're back and forth, and if you're storing it for any period of time, you want to get the E85 out of it. Other than that, I've got my own Mach 1. I've got an 03 Mach 1. I ran it on E85 off and on. Every once in a while, I'll go to the gas station. They're out of E85. I got to put my 93 octane tune back in it. Car's got 310,000 miles on it now. So
really?
There's no problems with longevity on E85. You've got a motor built for, a strong short block. 850 to the wheels. I mean, that, depending on who's tuning it and how they're tuning it, it shouldn't necessarily be a problem. 800, I would think, on E85 would be no problem. 850, depending on how the engine was built, depending on who built it, depending on the tuning, I wouldn't necessarily, because obviously if it's a daily driver and you're driving it, you're not wide open throttle all the time, right? So I don't necessarily think there should be a problem. It's a Gen 3 Coyote. It's not a Gen 1.
It's just
Gen 3
block more than anything else. It's like, okay, when does the block give out? Because you know,
That's a really good question. There's people making over 1,000 horsepower on a completely stock engine. So
yeah, for how long?
Yeah, not for long, right? But it's such a complicated question. I was trying to explain this the other day, like talking with people on EcoBoost Mustangs, the 2.3 4-cylinders. Where do you draw the line on those? Because you'll see people, somebody just made 800 horsepower to the wheels on a 2.3 liter EcoBoost. Obviously, it was a built motor, but where is the limits of the block? Where's the limits of the connecting rods, the pistons? We used to know on a 4.6 3-valve, 500, that was your limit. 502, you're picking up the pieces, right?
Yep.
The 4.6 2-valves and 4-valves, they would usually come apart right around 450. We knew this. This was limitations of the ring lands or the connecting rods or whatever the weak link was on that motor. These new engines, like especially the EcoBoost, the big problem with EcoBoost is LSPI, low speed pre-ignition. So it's not necessarily the horsepower that's going to blow up the motor. It's the people who think that boost should be a linear number and it should run the same boost at 2,000 RPMs that it does at 8,000 RPMs. So, you know, when you tune cars like that and you don't take, I had somebody arguing with me on Facebook a while back. They wanted to say, well, you got to make sure your customer doesn't get on it below 3,000 RPMs. And I'm like, what do you mean? You're not allowed to hit the gas below 3,000? Yeah, they got to make sure they drive it right. And I'm like, okay,
no,
listen,
you gotta
understand, right. Most of our customer base is not willing, you know, or they don't know, or they don't, you know, they don't understand LSPI the way that a tuner understands LSPI or an engine builder understands LSPI. They only know somebody's trying to race them. I'm putting my foot to the floor, you know. So you got to make sure as a tuner that the engine's not going to blow up if you go wide open throttle at 1,500 RPMs. So that a lot of times is when we talk about longevity and how much horsepower something can tolerate. A lot of it usually comes down to two things. Number one, what you experience with your car, the ring lands, the ring end gaps, and the temperature the engine runs. I think that in your case was a huge factor. And number two, the tuning, you know, how you go about doing certain things and where you're concentrating your time and how much time and effort you put into the calibration.
You know, I know in my case with my stage 1 Whipple here in Florida, and like you say, the fan settings are ridiculously high on the calibration for that particular package. I showed that car in that form, no mercy. I was beating the hell out of it every day out on the street in 90-degree temperature.
I've seen the videos.
even like if you go back to the 0 to 60 times, you know, I only posted some of the 0 to 60 times. You should have seen some of the ones where it went into cat over temp, you know, and I missed gears and I over revved it, and I really showed it no mercy. But it had a warranty on it, and hey, I was just letting it all hang out. I didn't really care. I just got this comment up on screen. There is some cool stuff. This guy has been around my channel pretty much from the very beginning. There's one thing I know about the stuff the content that I put on my channel is that not everybody that follows me because of my car is interested in the other content that I put up. I know this. You know what I'm saying? I can't always put up content about my car because I just simply can't come up with a video every week about my car. So I put up other stuff about different cars and different things and trucks and whatever it is. A lot of the followers from the days when I used to see there's some cool stuff a lot. That content isn't there, but I know that once I start doing stuff with my car, these people come back because they're subscribed. And he says he's subscribed, that he even knows the number when he hit with the subscription. Dude, you're just as important to me as anybody else. I'll always remember it. And I appreciate everybody that sticks by me because I try to put up content that people are interested in. Sometimes I try to appeal directly to my subscribers that are here for the Coyote stuff. But then I'm putting out stuff that appeals to the entire world of YouTube. James, your car is a perfect example of that MKZ.
Oh, yeah.
That video, believe it or not, is getting a fair amount of interest on YouTube. It's one of those videos that gets views every single day. Sometimes I put up videos that'll get a couple thousand views in the first 2 or 3 days, and then other videos don't get views until 2, 3 months, maybe even a year later. I've seen sometimes. So I put it up, and whatever it is, it is. Sometimes it's Coyote content, sometimes it's Camaro content. That shot clean Camaro that I put up, YouTube loves that one. That one probably going to get views until we get news of a new Camaro or the demise of this Camaro. So there is some cool stuff. I appreciate you, and I appreciate everybody. He asked an interesting question. This is something that I'm hearing a lot of lately around social media, is the electric cars. Electric cars, we're looking at by 2030, 2035, a lot of our gasoline powered cars are not going to be built anymore. And what I suggest to everybody else, I mean, because the idea of all electric, that doesn't really appeal to me very well. I don't know if I'm going to want to have an electric car. So I'm going to keep the car I have. I'm not getting rid of my car. I got a 2018 Mustang. It's a 10-speed car. You know, I don't have a stock motor in it. I got a Whipple in it. I've already replaced the rear. I'm probably going to have to freshen up the transmission at some point, you know, because in the 10 or 80s, you start putting a lot of power through them. It's good to freshen them up and get good clutches in them before you break something and then have to, you got metal throughout the whole thing.
There's a lot of appeal. There's a lot of appeal to electric cars, and then there's a lot of purists who don't like the electric cars. They don't like it's got to have a gas. It's not a Mustang if it doesn't have a gasoline engine. I mean, I understand the argument. I understand, and I agree to a certain extent. I think electric is going to be the future, but not necessarily 100%. I think there's still going to be, in the short-term future, electric sounds great. You know, you can get all the torque, your Teslas, oh my God, it's got torque for days. It's got this and that. But the problem that you're going to run into is the infrastructure. Like, for example, when I was tuning a lot out of Brothers Performance up in DeLand, and then I'm going down to Steeda and whatever. One of the reasons my Mach 1 has 300,000 miles on it is because I was driving 200 miles at a time. There were days I was driving 400 miles. I would drive 200 miles, do a dyno day, and then drive 200 miles home. You know, so you can't exactly take your electric car, drive it 200 miles, and plug it into somebody's 110 outlet and expect it to get you home another 200 miles. You have truck drivers who are driving countless hundreds of miles a day. There are certain types of people who just electric is not going to work for them. So you need that infrastructure to be there. You need, and who wants to, I mean, they got the charging stations on the highway, but now after driving 3 hours, going for a, this is Toothless, another one of my cats. But so driving 3 hours a day, then working 10 hours, then I would go to dinner with my kids while I was up there. And then I got to drive 3 hours home, but now I got to stop on the highway and wait an hour or two to charge my car. That's just, I've got too much else going on for that to play into my schedule. I need something different. And maybe a hybrid, or maybe, I'm not one of these people that's not willing to accept change. I'm okay with electric as an option, for those people that it works for or whatever. And there's going to be an aftermarket. I mean, I could even talk about RC cars. When I was growing up, when I was younger, I was into remote control cars. And when I was growing up, it was all about gasoline. Everybody wanted nitro, right? Nitro was fast. Well, then they came out with brushless motors, right? And now that everything is brushless, nitro is gone. No, we don't want nitro. We want brushless now. You put a 3S lipo in a with a good brushless setup, and those cars haul ass. So I mean, it's a completely different world, and cars are going to be the same thing as technology grows. You're still going to have shops modifying them, but I think you're going to find that a lot of it is going to be, oh look, Smokey.
This is Smokey. He's not a good cat for the camera. He doesn't like to look at the camera. He only wants what he wants. He's not really interested in anything else. See, I pick him up. He's out of here. He's done. He wants me to feed him.
You gotta say hi to the camera. You gotta say hi. Hi.
So Mike's stupid fast truck asked about gapping his plugs. The 28 was that 28,000s.
Yeah. That's fairly common. It really depends on what boost you're running, and I hate even using the term boost, but basically what pulley, how much power you're making, what fuel you're running on. But typically factory coils, most stuff that you're running, I would say in most scenarios, anywhere from 28 to 32 is going to work just fine. You start getting into higher pressures like EcoBoost, where like a Coyote with a Whipple on it, you're typically 8 to 12 pounds of boost. You know, we get into EcoBoost. I think my Lincoln, I'm running over 23, 24 pounds of boost. The cylinder pressures are way higher on those cars. Okay, you gotta sit down. You can't have your butt in the camera. No, that's not gonna work.
So I'm not seeing a lot. I'm not seeing a lot of questions for James. But all right, so Desmond makes a comment about the electric vehicles. Personally, I think with electric vehicles, by the time we get to 2030, they're not going to be like the electric vehicles today. I think there's going to be more range on the batteries.
Well, it all depends on how the government and how the customer base approaches it. In my opinion, when you get the government mandating electric, you're going to end up like Russia, where they're just putting out cars that meet their criteria that are boring, and you don't have any cool cars. Look at what's going on in the US with Tesla, right? You've got the Nissan Leaf and you've got the Toyota Prius, and people make fun of them, right? But you've got cars like the Tesla, the Model S that goes out to the drag strip, 4-door sedan, and they'll smoke damn near anything at the track because all torque all the time. And, the dual motor setup with the Tesla builds cool cars. I'm not going to argue with them. They build a cool car. Their new Roadster gets ludicrous mode from Spaceballs. I mean, how cool is that, right? The guy's doing things because that's what his customer base wants. And essentially, not everybody thinks that's cool, right? But you've got somebody who's building electric cars to compete against gasoline cars. And in order to compete against them, he's making them cool in what he considers cool. And that, I think, is what we need. We need competition in the marketplace. We need people to develop whatever they need. And whether it be a commuter, electric can be a commuter, but so can gas, and electric can be a race car. And electric can get good range. You just need the technology to do it. You need better battery technology or whatever.
Right. Batteries and fast charging stations to get you. Yeah. You travel a 300-mile trip, you got to charge your batteries to get back that 300 miles. So you got to know that you can do that. There's got to be a charging station close by. It's got to charge fast. So there's a lot of things that they got to work out. And I think they will. It just doesn't sound so great right now, but what are you going to do? That's what the future is. This comment here for David Martin. David Martin's also been a guy on the channel that's been around here for a long, long time, and I appreciate you, David. We see you around on all the other other.
I absolutely agree with him. I think calling the new Mach-E a Mustang, I disagree with it. I'm not going to say it's a bad vehicle. It's cool in its own right, but I don't necessarily think it's should technically be considered a Mustang. You know, it sure having an option of something like that is cool. I'm okay with that. But to brand it a Mustang, and I kind of have a feeling that Ford is going in a direction where they're trying to break off like Ram did. They're trying to do with Corvette, where they just make the Mustang its own, like Ford and Lincoln. Now you're going to have Mustang is going to be its own brand, and they're going to have several models under the Mustang brand.
From what I've seen over the years, I'm not old enough to be a muscle car guy. Like, muscle cars were already 8 years old by the time I could get my license. A lot of muscle cars were still around though. And a lot of the media, the way the media was, it was all magazines and newspapers and billboards, posters and things like that. We didn't have what we have now. There has always been a prototype or a rendering of a four-door Mustang. Going back to the 1964. You could browse four-door Mustang and you'll see them all on the web. They're all there.
Station wagons. Yeah.
Ford pulled a real quick one on us while we're all focused on the Gen 3 Coyotes and the Cobra Jets and all of the cool stuff that's coming out, that's running on gasoline. And they quietly build a four-door Mustang without us even really thinking about it. Or, we're all saying, oh, no, it shouldn't have been a Mustang. Okay, but it is. They did do it. They finally did it. They've been wanting to do it, but they couldn't figure out a way to do it without tarnishing the brand. We're not even looking over there right now. We're focusing on what we have. Well, I think when the S650 comes out and we see how similar it is to the Mach-E, that's when we're going to find out what the S650 is. It's probably something very close to what the Mach-E is. And it's going to be, like you say, James, probably hybrids.
Look at the Lincoln Aviator hybrid. You've got an all-wheel drive 3-liter EcoBoost with an electric assist. I've got the 3-liter EcoBoost in my Lincoln, and I'm putting 450 to the wheels without. It's still got a paper air filter in the airbox. And I'm putting 450 to the wheels. Now add 100 horsepower electric assist on top of that. How is that bad? I don't necessarily see that being bad. But I think we can all criticize the electric Mustang all we want, but if I understand correctly, they're all sold out, aren't they? The first run is completely sold out.
I think so. My friend Fran from Underfed Coyote 50, his wife, they live in Vegas, and his wife works at a local Ford dealer. On his Instagram, he posted a quick video of a walk around of a Mach-E. It was black. Yeah, it looks like a little crossover, a four-door crossover, fully electric. I don't know, these things go 0 to 60 faster than our Mustangs do now. Yeah. So the future looks bright. It's just, we're going to have to get used to that. That's going to be tough for a lot of us to get used to that.
Yeah. The big thing that I worry about with electric is the safety of the batteries. If you've ever been around a remote control car with a lithium battery that's gone up, you've seen a couple of Teslas that the batteries have gone up. If you have an accident, it's not necessarily any different than gasoline. If gasoline explodes in a crash, it's going to be bad. But if you get knocked out and you have some sort of lithium battery fire, it's going to go up. It's going to go up quick, and you will not be able to put it out. It does not need oxygen to burn. So it's not like a fire extinguisher will put out a lithium fire. So that's the big thing that I worry about.
I got some comments that I want to read through. I just want to point out on the battery thing. I know a guy, Jake Teasler, who has another YouTube channel, Jake Teasler. He's got a 99 Prius, right? Yeah. Which I understand that Prius is a bad year for a Prius because the engine is prone to blowing head gaskets.
I could go somewhere with that, but
well, in his case, what's interesting,
forever a good year for the Prius, but
yeah. Well, look, he threw some bars leak in it and it sealed the head gasket. He's driving her around since he put the bars leak in it since like 6 months ago. He got the car cheap and he's just trying to get mileage out of it. And then after that, he's going to let it go. But the important thing is he's got like 300,000 miles on the car, and he's still on the original batteries.
Yeah.
I think that's pretty interesting. Victor Xavier, what's happening, man? This is Victor's another guy who's been around my channel for a very, very long time. Thanks a lot for sticking around, Victor. You got a question here. How important is tuning when running a high stall converter or a 6R80 that runs fast at the track? I mean, high stall converter, I imagine that's an NA car, right? Would you say? What do you have to elaborate on that?
Either NA or a centrifugal.
Yeah.
I mean, you can put a stall converter in anything, but is it going to be beneficial? Well, it depends on the rest of the combination. How important is tuning? Well, how high is stall? Where are your deficiencies in the tune? Where are your, what's the limiting factors? So these are the things that, you don't necessarily know just from a question on Facebook. I would say it's absolutely important, but it's going to be this much important on this application and this much important on that application, Yeah. So it just depends on the details. Technically, some stall converters you don't even need to tune for. You just put them in there and they work. But are you locking the converter at wide open? Are you leaving it unlocked? Are you locking in a certain gear? How do you handle that? So a lot of it depends on who's tuning the car to begin with and what their different tuners do things differently. And this is why, I'm not out here trying to, steal everybody else's business. I'm just somebody different doing, I've got a slightly different focus than some of the other guys. So, I'm not going to say that anybody's doing it wrong. I'm a huge fan of locking the torque converter on a lot of cars at wide open throttle. The reason that you need the torque converter is to get out of the hole. Once you get out of the hole, you'll lock the torque converter. But on certain applications, and I say that because when the torque converter is unlocked, for example, what's one of the main mods that they recommend with a high stall torque converter? A transmission cooler. Why? Because you generate a lot of heat with a torque converter. What is heat? Where are you getting that heat? From the energy that the engine is creating, that the torque converter loses efficiency with the higher stall. Now it's at the benefit of getting the engine into its power band faster. So you lose a little bit of efficiency with the focus of getting into the power band. So if you lock the torque converter, you get to keep that efficiency, right? You're no longer throwing anything away. But remember what I was talking about earlier, where you have the power band come up and then go back down. How wide is that power band? How flat is? So if you've got a car that's completely flat in the power band versus one that comes up like this and then falls off, the different applications are going to dictate whether you want to lock the converter or whether you want to leave it open, or how you want to run it. A lot of times you got to go to the track and try it both ways. You can look at a dyno sheet all you want, but until you actually try it, it's just a guessing game. So
okay, so that was an NA car. I had his comment up a little while ago.
Okay. And naturally aspirated, it really matters with your power band. And I'll go so far as to say this: the reason that I was the first to get one of those NA 18 Mustangs into the 10s is because when I was tuning that car, again, I think I said this before, everybody concentrates on just the wide open throttle top end of the horsepower, because that's horsepower sells tunes, right? Torque wins races. So if everybody's making the same horsepower, but at 2,000 RPMs, I'm making 30 foot-pounds of torque more than the next guy. Nobody offered a torque converter for a 10R80 car at the time. So how are you going to get a 60-foot time out of a car? You got to give it torque out of the hole. You got to get that torque as soon as possible to get that car moving. The quicker you get it up into its power band, the quicker your quarter mile is going to be.
I know you tuned my car, and I'm making 800 to the wheels, right? Which by today's standards, a lot of people are making more than that.
Yeah.
But I'm
You
still
ain't
on pump.
anybody unless you're 800 to the wheels anymore.
Yeah. But my car is so strong off the bottom, the way you tuned it. And we can't give away any trade secrets. There are some things that you told me about that I'm not going to elaborate on. But the way that, like, when we were getting into the final tunes, you were moving some things around, okay,
Yeah.
to bring torque in, and it did bring the torque curve up, and you could see it down low. I know when I drive my car around on the street, even with the drag radials on it, I lower the tire pressures, I heat them up, and I cannot get traction with that car, no matter what, unless I'm at the track and I do a real good smoky burnout and I'm on a prep surface with my drag radials at like 18 PSI, I'm not getting any traction with my little 800 horsepower pump gas car, you know.
but you're out of the box 3.875 pulley.
Right. 10 pounds of boost, I think, at best you get out of that. There's a couple of comments here that I want to get to. 2-Valve GT says the X650 is going to get a 6.2 pushrod V8. Now, I didn't hear about 6.2, but I did hear about 6.8.
Yeah, I want to say there were rumors that it was going to get the what are they calling it, the Godzilla motor,
The baby Godzilla.
Yeah,
the
the 7.3 or whatever. But
well, we'll see.
I mean, it's all speculation. Everything I'm hearing about that new pushrod 7.3 is pretty good. Personally, I'm a big fan of the overhead cam stuff, but you know, hey, push rods are cool.
People want them. This is the thing. Dodge with their engines, that they're selling cars like crazy, and Chevy's doing pretty good with this.
Well, that's just the thing. Everybody wants to go Dodge and GM because they got the bigger pushrod motors. From a reliability standpoint, I can understand it, but you know, I get 300,000 miles on a 464 valve that everybody had timing chain issues with. So how come? I mean, don't get me wrong, you hear them chains rattle when I start it up now, but you know, it's not. If you can get 300,000 miles out of a car, you know, I mean, that's how reliable do you need it to be? That's pretty reliable, if you ask me.
So, Sean Bischoffberger. Did I say that right? I hope so. If not, I apologize. Primo 50 asked a question about his Roush car with the killer chiller catless headers. What benefits does the booster pump bring to the table without increasing the size of the injectors?
Well, the booster pump isn't necessarily, it's not like the booster pump is giving you horsepower. The booster pump is a requirement at a horsepower level. And it's not necessarily the booster pump itself. You have a requirement of fuel demand based on the supercharger, based on the pulley, based on how much air you're moving. You have to feed the engine, right? Now you take the injector into consideration, you know, depending on how your fuel is set up, how your fuel is it Gen 1, Gen 2, Gen 3 Coyote, dual injectors or single injectors. Is it an adjustable fuel pressure like your Gen 2 Coyotes? We couldn't control fuel pressure. It was dictated by the regulator. But now with the Gen 3 or the, we can go in there and work with it based on the direct injection and the supply pump and whatever. So there's different, or if you go with an aftermarket fuel system. Personally, I go back and forth on the booster pump. Booster pump is a nice, easy way to get a gain out of a stock pump without going to the tank. You just plug it in, put the seat back down, you've got more fuel. It's nice and it's easy, but the problem with a booster pump is if it ever fails, how do you know? Does the engine shut off when the booster pump fails? Or does it just go back to stock voltage? I've seen a few cars that failed because the booster pump failed and there was no warning. It just went back to stock voltage and they leaned out and done. All it takes is one good pull with not enough fuel and you're done.
I know in the case of Primo 50, he was at the track without the booster pump on his Roush calibration after he put the killer chiller on the car. And he did a and he did pretty good on that run. I think it was a low 11,
Yeah.
right?
And
then he
that's
went
the
out.
thing.
Well,
Go ahead.
his engine light came on, and the code came up, and the code came up as low fuel pressure, something
Okay.
related to fuel. So he had to put the booster pump on it to get fuel to the engine. Now, somehow, not changing anything else, same blower pulley, no changes to anything else on the car, just putting the killer chiller on it, same calibration. Now, suddenly, with the killer chiller, the engine needs more fuel. So I thought that was a very interesting series of events there.
Well, and this could be. I'm going to try and see if I can word this shorter, because as you can tell, I get somewhat wordy with some of my responses. But
well, I know it's hard to answer accurately without going into detail.
The killer chiller is not changing your pulley ratio, right? So you're not getting this big, massive, drastic change in airflow. But one of the things that we do on a supercharged application, if we want to give the customer a nice, good dyno sheet, we give the car a nice, good cool down. In your case, with the killer chiller, it was the opposite. We would start the car up and run it for like 5 minutes, letting the killer chiller get nice and cold before we would do the pull. But when you run the killer chiller and you're cooling everything down, cooler air is denser, right? So even though we're not changing the pulley ratio, because the supercharger is colder, number one, the tension or the clearances between the rotor pack and the case, or the rotors themselves, if you're running it colder, it changes those tolerances. The other thing is, if the air is colder coming in, it's colder going out, you will naturally get a small increase in airflow just by running a colder temperature. You can pack more. It looks like I got a zoo here, doesn't it?
Well, with 15 cats,
all over the place.
I qualify. I got
What's
one.
that?
Like 14 cats might qualify somewhat of a zoo. I mean, I know how cats are. They're kind of independent.
That's Austin behind me, for anybody who cares.
That's a nice looking cat. Was he about 3 years old, maybe?
No, he's year and a half.
Year and a half. Okay.
Yeah, he's a little small for his size, but yeah. His brother Dallas, he's Austin, named after the racetrack in Austin, Texas, Circuit of the Americas. His brother Dallas is almost twice his size. It's crazy. But
so my friend Adam, did I remember your name right? I think I did. Silverback 69. We've been doing a lot of live streaming over on his channel, and him and his group of guys are really cool. And I've been over there with them, and thanks a lot for coming over here. He makes a comment, 800 to the wheels is very respectable. You know, when we dynoed my car last year and got 800 to the wheels, that was a shock, in my opinion. We're still on pump gas. I have a stock fuel system in the car. We thought that our port injectors were 36-pound injectors from Whipple. We found out that they were 33 pounds. Like, I don't even have much of an injector on the car. Yeah. And stock fuel system, nothing but a DW400 fuel pump, right? Combine that with the chiller and the level of tuning that I got by James, because this was a pretty extreme case of dyno tuning, because we were on the car for 14 hours. We revised the tune 15 times. And I tell you what, we had to cut it short because the shop had to close. But we could have been on that dyno for another 10 hours and squeezed more and more and more power out of it, because we couldn't really see the limits. There were the limits. Like we got NOx sensor activity at, I think, 750 horsepower, but then some of the parameters in the tune changed, and then the NOx sensors, we were able to step it up and add more timing. And I can't give away trade secrets. I'm not going to do that. Jay just is say what he wants to say, but things just kept moving around, and the engine was so tolerant to knock. It like didn't want to knock. We could do whatever we wanted, and we added timing a number of different ways. There's different ways to do that. There's different places and spots that you could get the calibration to say, okay, we like it. We're going to give you more timing.
And
So
To elaborate on that, I want to be clear. Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. There may be some delay.
To elaborate on that, I want everybody to understand I'm not one of those tuners that just likes to go in there and desensitize knock sensors. That's not what I'm doing. I have a routine that I have to make sure that the knock sensors are happy with what's going on. And everything I'm doing in the tune is to try and make those knock sensors happy. So, and again, like you said, I'm not going to give away any trade secrets. I'm sorry, anybody who's watching this, they're waiting to hear what I'm changing. No, I'm not there are certain things I got to keep secret, but
yeah,
the things that I'm doing are things that I've learned through the years. This is why an engine detonates. These are the things that cause detonation. These are the tools that I have to work with. And in a Gen 3 Coyote, I have a lot of tools. I have a lot of tools to work with. And ultimately, the biggest thing is just time. The more time I spend with the car on the dyno, the more power I can get out of it. And we do this, you expect, okay, well, 1 degree of timing is going to give us huge power gains and whatever. And that's true. It does give me lots of power, but how do you get that degree of timing? Do you go in there? You don't force it in. There's tuners out there that are like, oh my God, I need to put timing in this motor. It doesn't want to take any timing. Let me desensitize the knock sensors and bam, there's my timing. And then before you know it, you're putting an engine in the car. So the way I go about it is it takes a lot longer to do things that way, but I'm very picky about how I do things. I'm very I have no problem spending. I go into certain applications and I just know that it's going to take me a long time tuning the car. I know I'm going to be there for a really long time. I've got a car on the dyno right now. It's naturally aspirated with cams. I spent 2 days on the dyno just getting wide open throttle horsepower out of it. Now I've got to go get some drivability.
I have you text me the dyno chart on that. I want to show it to everybody.
For the Lincoln?
No, the
one that I'm talking about, the Coyote. Yeah. I see the question on the Lincoln. So yeah, what I'm going to do is I'm going to write a whole post about it and the differences of, why I was able to get what I got out of that car. Because the results were actually really, really impressive with that car.
Can I show them that dyno chart? Oh no, should we hold off on that one?
I don't want. I need to figure out how to put the words.
Okay.
Let's save that one for the next. If we do another live.
If that car goes on the dyno again, I want to come out and do a video of it because I missed that one. When Mustangs go on the dyno and make power like that, that's when I want to come out and do a video. For all you guys who are watching, James is over on the East Coast. It looks like
for a second.
There you are. James is on the East Coast. I'm on the West Coast. He's about 2 hours away. And at times I drive over there and do videos of some of his stuff. And sometimes it's not easy for me to get there. But when something like that car, what was that, a Gen 3 with cams? That's something that I really
Gen 3 with cams. No, it was Gen 2 with cams.
Gen 2. Okay, well that's good too, because really anything with a Coyote in it is good content, and it definitely shows what you can do. Guys, I've seen the graph. I can't show it to you today because James wants to finish it, and then we can show it to you either on his Facebook or I'll get something on my Instagram, his Instagram, or some video maybe I'll put together. But so anyway, James Silverback is asking about your Lincoln.
Yeah.
That's a black label MKZ, right?
It is a 2017 Lincoln MKZ black label with the 3-liter EcoBoost V6 twin turbo all-wheel drive. And right now, with stock that car put down about 330, And all I have done, the car is completely stock with the paper air filter in it. All I have done to it is I'm on about E40, so I'm blending. With EcoBoost, a lot of times you can't go fully E85 on a stock fuel injectors and fuel pump. So just E40, and I'm actually, oddly enough, prototyping a flex fuel tune for EcoBoost. But with E40 and tuning, I'm at 450 wheel with that car.
That's insane. That's insane. You know, when I drove
I was just getting 25 miles to the gallon with the cruise control set a lot higher than it probably should have been. I'm not going to give numbers, but
when I drove in that car with you, you know, I'm out there with the camera thinking that, you know, this thing with 450 horse to the rear wheel and all that torque that it's making, that it would make for a great video. And the car was so quiet and comfortable, like a completely stock car, you couldn't tell. I mean, you don't even know how fast you're going. The thing is, you're so isolated from the road because of all of the Lincoln stuff, right?
Yeah.
You know, all sound deadening and the Magnaride and or the Lincoln version of the Magnaride. That car was, I can't describe it. That I don't even know if I can do a good video of that unless we take it to the track and show the top.
It's borderline electric. In fact, one of the things that upsets me with that car is Ford is, they've been doing this a lot lately. They pump fake engine sounds into the sound system to make it sound like it's got a V8 or something in it. And having been a technician, my built engines, I understand. I'm listening to every time I get on the throttle. I'm in constant diagnostic mode. Every time I drive any car, I'm constantly listening for any squeaks, rattles, any kind of thing. I'm driving that car and I get on the throttle and I hear these engine sounds and I'm like, that's not how this engine sounds. That's not how this engine is supposed to sound. Stop pumping the sounds through my car stereo.
Right.
I hate it, but I love just, you know, don't get me wrong. I love Mustangs. I love Mustangs. I really do. I love 800 horsepower Mustangs. I love 1,000. I've tuned 1,000 horsepower Vipers, but I spend 3 hours at a time in the car on a regular basis. We just did 3 hours yesterday, 3 hours today. That car, getting the fuel economy that it does, it has massaging seats. I start getting a little tired on the road. I just click the button and it just starts massaging my back, and it helps make the trip better. And that's what I need. And it's fast as, I mean, I'll run with a Gen 1, Gen 2 Coyote, no problem. That's been proven. But you know, the Gen 3s I'll have an issue with. You put a 10-speed automatic.
You know, with all-wheel drive on the street, a Mustang is going to break traction where you're not going to break traction. You know what I mean?
Oddly enough, that's one of the biggest problems I have with the car right now is the launch. The tires, the previous owner, they put these Cooper tires on there. They've got a tread wear of like 8,000 or something like that. It's it's like trying to drive on rocks. No matter all-wheel drive or not, the car just spins. So I got another set of wheels and tires that I was supposed to bolt on this weekend, but I got up there. They were up by my parents, live up there, and I had my son go check them out for me. And I went up there to bolt them on the car, and I'm rolling the tire, and I hear something rolling around inside the tire. I'm like, it sounds like somebody changed the valve stems and they just pulled the old ones out, and the bottom of the valve stem is just rolling around in the tire. I wasn't going to bolt them on like that. So I'm gonna take them to Steeda and have them break the tires down, get it out, and probably make sure I got good TPMS sensors in there and get them all straightened out. And I'll have that car at Bradenton for the NMRA event at the beginning of March. And hopefully it'll be hooking up by then, and we'll be running some pretty respectable quarter-mile times. I'm not going to say I'm going to break any records or whatever, but because the car is completely stock. I mean, I haven't done anything to justify a record with the car, other than tuning. But it should be, for a completely stock vehicle, it should be running very respectable times.
Oh, that should be interesting. It's not about breaking records. It's showing people what you could do with a stock MKZ with the 3-liter.
Well, the goal is to use the vehicle as a development vehicle, because I'm actually fairly big in the Fusion community. One of my customers is now a good friend of mine. He holds the record for the world's fastest Ford Fusion. He's running 11.7 at 119 miles an hour with a Ford Fusion.
Now you have,
and he still drives it every day.
James, do you have videos of that on your Facebook? You got videos of that Fusion?
Yeah, go to my Facebook page. I've got videos of his dyno, videos. He actually, when he ran the world record, it's the one time he did it, somebody suggested, hey, you should Facebook Live your quarter-mile pass. So he set up his phone in the windshield, and he Facebook Lived the world record pass, including getting the time slip. Somebody on a list, they were on the list, but they couldn't prove, they didn't have the time slip or whatever. They were just going on. So it was this big thing where, did he really run that number or didn't he? And so he goes out there, is like, dude, I Facebook Lived it. You can't, you can't argue that I actually ran the number. So it was pretty funny. But yeah, we know the car's got more left in it. We've got it back on the dyno. He was running like E40, E50 and mixing with MS109 so that we could get a little more pressure out of it. But he's since upgraded to the XDI fuel pump and the XDI injectors. And I had it on the dyno. We were fighting some issues with spark blowout and some other stuff, but we finally got that stuff figured out. But we ran out of time to start making some more power. But we're gonna start turning it up here, and hopefully in Bradenton he should be running better than he was last year. So we should be resetting the record again. So,
okay, so Mario asked a lot of these questions are all, I don't even know if some of these guys are still in here, but Mario served in 1988. Do I still
tune 3 valves? Yes, I do. And I was just talking to somebody about a 94 Mustang as well. I tune pretty much anything that anybody wants to pay me to tune. But what we end up with is, the older the car, the more likely that you're going to have issues. And the reason is typically because more people have worked on the car. And the older the generation, like 3 valves, they were usually, I mean, if you know what you're doing, people knew how to build a supercharger kit or whatever. So we don't typically have too many problems with the 3 valves, but they are getting older. A lot of them are higher mileage. So you get drive shaft issues, clutches, and, other stuff that typically has issues on those that, you worry about. So a lot of these tuners, they'll shy away from them. I don't necessarily turn them away. Sometimes you will end up paying more to do certain applications. And a lot of that stuff, you got to understand, I don't sell parts, right? I don't sell anything. I will, but when you call me up and you say, can you tune my application? I'm going to want a complete build sheet in an email of everything you've done to that car. There's going to be a lot of things that I won't tune for. Like if you've got Beachworks injectors, I won't tune for it. I need to have a specific brand injector, because I know these injectors work. These injectors, I have good calibration data for these. I don't have data for those. And it'll make the difference between 5 hours on the dyno or a week on the dyno chasing our tails and the drivability is still garbage.
Right.
So having that, and that's the biggest thing, is I need to make sure that your combination is something that is tunable. 3 valve blocks. Blocks were, I don't think were the problem in most applications on the 3 valves. It was the ringlands. So but the connecting rod's coming in a close second. One of the guys, when I worked at SCT, he said he was doing a 3 valve, and he was like, yeah, we're making about 489. I was like, man, you're getting close if that thing was an automatic. He goes, it is an automatic. I said, man, you need to back it off. It's going to blow. He goes, oh, no knock. It's air, fuel is good, everything. I said, dude, it's going to pop. He goes, oh, no. And this was a Friday. He calls me back on a Monday. He goes, guess what I'm doing? I said, what? He goes, I'm prying the piston rings off of the headers. I'm like, I told you. But yeah, it has nothing to do with how good the tune was. It was the ring lands are only so thick; they can only take so much pressure.
Yep. So anyway, this comment that I got up from Mustang Nation. Mustang Nation is one of my brothers from up on Long Island. He just recently turned 1,000 subscribers. He's got a great channel.
Awesome.
He goes to a shop that I used to go to. If I remember oh gosh, I can't remember. But back in that day, he had one of the hottest 03 Cobras in town, and he since got rid of it because that's ancient history at this point. But it's nice to see some of the things he does. He goes out to Jones Beach. He goes to car shows up there. Those are my old stomping grounds, man. I used to live there. Like I lived most of my young adult life there before I moved here to Florida. And he's saying, "Hey, Al, first, this thing about being first." When somebody posts a video, I jump in there and I write first. That's something that somebody did like a couple of years ago that I noticed somebody was doing, and I revived it just for the heck of it to see if it caught on. And it actually caught on. A lot of people like it's even tough to be first now. Some people are jumping in there and getting to it way before I do. But yeah, I've been on Mustang Nation's channel. Congratulations to turning 1,000 subscribers. You're doing really good with that, and I see good things happening for you going forward. And the competition's getting tough. I don't know how often I could be first, but I'm going to keep trying.
Yeah.
Stupid Fast Truck asked a question. Have you run this MKZ on all-wheel drive on the dyno?
That is actually a really good question. No, I don't. I run it on a two-wheel drive dyno. And there's a couple of reasons. I have a very specific way in which I dyno those cars because, number one, the way Ford runs an all-wheel drive system, at least in the front wheel bias, so the Taurus SHOs, Explorers, MKZ, Taurus SHO, or the Fusion Sport, the 2-liter Fusions, anything like that, where it's a front wheel biased platform with the rear drive, you have to make sure that if you're going to run it on an all-wheel drive dyno, that the dyno is linked. The front roller and the rear roller are linked together, because otherwise what will end up happening is it'll start blending out of the rear drive and the rear roller will start falling behind, and then it hammers the rear drive and it keeps kicking in and out, and you blow up your rear drive unit on those cars if you're on an unlinked dyno. So what I do, and this is twofold. Number one, because finding a linked dyno in Florida, I think there's a couple of them, but when I was tuning the MKZ, I was on a dyno for 4 days with my initial development work on the car. Trying to find a dyno and saying, hey, I need to tie it up for 4 days. They're going to be like, that'll be $5,000, please. You know, so I've got the dyno that I work with most is McDonald Motorsports in Stuart, Florida. Great guy. And him and I have been working together for years, and I send him a lot of dyno work. He sends me a lot of tuning work. It's a mutually beneficial. It makes it to the point where I don't need to go out and buy my own shop, my own dyno, and get everything. I do a lot of work for Steeda. I do a lot of work for him. I do a lot of work for everybody. So I'm not on the dyno every day. It doesn't make sense for me to have my own shop with my own overhead. I'm not on the dyno enough. But if I need 4 days of dyno time, he gives me a special rate, and I give him kickbacks, and you know, I mention him, and he's a good guy. We're good friends.
You got a cover for each other, you know.
Yeah.
I've been there a couple times. Seems like a nice shop. Seems like a nice guy. You know, it's available to you.
He's a great guy.
Yeah.
And what I do in order to run the all-wheel drive car on a two-wheel drive dyno is I pull the drive shaft out. Now, you're thinking, well, the drive shaft, I mean, yeah, 4 bolts on it. It's a 3-piece drive shaft. On the MKZ and the Fusion Sports, it's a 3-piece drive shaft. So there's 2 center support bearings. You got to drop the exhaust system. It's a whole big process to get the drive shaft out. But in that application, I'm not tearing up the rear drive unit. I'm not, it's safer to run them on a 2-wheel drive than it is on an all-wheel drive. The data is just as good. Once you fail the system, you fail the system. It runs just like it would. You get the same data. Nothing's different. You're just in 2-wheel drive mode instead of 4-wheel drive mode.
And so all the traction, all of that stuff would be disabled as soon as it has a fail mode. There's nothing. The rear wheels. It's like not even having a computer controlled car. Really, there's no, like I say, there's no traction control, advanced track.
Yeah, it fails the system, and then you're tuning it as if it were a 2-wheel drive car. So,
right.
But then once it's done, you put the drive shaft back in, and it's all good.
So Des from Gone in 60 asked how much luck you had with the 2.7 EcoBoost. Marcelino's car is a 2.7 EcoBoost.
Marcelino's car is a 2.7 EcoBoost, and it currently holds the world record for his platform. So I'd say I got some experience. Now, when you say you got a Bronco in order, the truck, I'd have to see how it is in the Broncos, because the trucks are typically different than the cars. I've tuned a few of the 2.7 EcoBoost trucks. I don't set a whole lot of world records with those because there's some tuners out there that specialize in that stuff. But most of the customers that come to me are bringing me their daily drivers, and they just want more power, better fuel economy, all that kind of stuff. So they're not out there modding the hell out of them, trying to, set records with them. But
all right, Shawana 2001 Korean-inspired Mustang GT. This YouTuber is a friend of mine who's just getting started with her channel. She's got a new Edge convertible, I think, nice yellow one, and she's cranking. Yeah, she's cranking out some pretty good videos. We wish you a lot of luck. Everybody in the street, follow her. I would like to see her get some channel growth and get some attention, and hopefully at some point we'll see 1,000 subscribers on that channel. So yeah, she's a really cool kid, and we wish her well. So somebody's David Moss says, "Is this coffee?" No, this is not coffee. This is iced tea. I make my own iced tea. I drink iced tea all the time. It's in a Snapple bottle. I used to drink Snapple, but it's too sweet, so I don't like it anymore. So I just make my own iced tea, and I enjoy it. So we've been on for almost 2 hours, James.
Yeah, it's.
I haven't had a chance to actually engage with the audience a little bit. A lot of my people have been coming in here saying hello, and I don't know if anybody, if all of you is still in here, but Sublime is in here. He's a guy that we've been having a lot of conversation on other live streams. Like I say, Mike Stupid Fast has helped me with my computer. David Martin is a loyal follower. I mean, he's even on other channels talking nice things about me. So I really appreciate that, David. My brother, Ant, Black Knight Mustang, we've been YouTube friends since the very, very beginning, since the day I started my channel and the day he started his channel. My friend here, Desmond from Gone in 60, is a really good friend of mine. We talk all the time. He works at a Ford dealer, and he cranks out some pretty good videos too. James, you know him. You tuned his Bullet. And the list goes on and on. I mean, all my friends are here. Silverback, we participate, in a lot of live streams. Here's another guy, Victor Xavier, who's been around my channel since the very beginning. Like I mentioned earlier, I put out other content. Like earlier on in my channel, it was all about my car, and I will still be doing stuff about my car, especially, James, when you and I can get to the track and data log it and see if we can get that 9-second pass. We know we're going to get it. We just have to get to the track.
You ran a 10.02 with the factory front wheels and tires.
Yeah, 20-inch wheels. I went to the 8th mile with they weren't pizza cutters, James. What do you call those tires I put on the front? They were.
They're like a mid skinny. I don't know what you had. Yeah, they weren't pizza cutters. They were almost like a 6-cylinder tire you were running in the front.
I weighed them compared to my stock 20-inch wheels, and they were 12 pounds a piece lighter. Okay.
Yeah.
So I put those front tires on the car and went out to them on the 8th mile, and I ran a 642 at 112.7. So that at the quarter mile is a 9-second pass. My 9-second and the 60-foot time was even better on that. But I think it was 154 compared to a 162 on my best quarter mile pass. So from the very beginning, the skinnies, whatever you want to call them, made a big difference on my car. And here again, pump gas car. This is not an E85 car. I'm on pump gas. The times more resemble a pump gas, a E85 car. Not quite, but close. So we'll get out there at some point and do some racing. And also some other people. I'm seeing some new faces around here. Chris Morris says James is the man.
That's my buddy from Texas.
Okay. Yeah, James is the man. James has done the right thing by me. I mean, one thing that I can say that I really appreciate about knowing James, we have a great business relationship. We have a friendship. You know, we get along real good. We like to talk stuff. James helped me with my car when I needed it. And as you know, having a friend as a tuner like this, he's somebody that I can talk to. And when you can talk to your tuner, it opens up your mind to a whole new world of what it is, what we're doing here. Now, he talks to me about a lot of stuff that I can retain, but I can't repeat because I don't have the capacity to repeat that. I don't have the level of education that James has or any other prominent tuner for that matter. These guys live in a completely different world than us retail guys. But for me to have a friend like this that I can talk to at just about any time I can't even put a price on that because not too many of us have that option to talk to our tuners. Our tuners might give us good tunes through the email and stuff like that. But to be able to talk to a tuner, that's golden. And I really appreciate that. We got some other new faces here. Fat Boy Fox, I think that you and I just hooked up on another live stream at some point. So it's nice to have you here. Like I say, Mustang Nation, one of my brothers, and Silverback. And the list goes on and on. I appreciate all you guys. This is one of those live streams where I really couldn't engage all of you. We're basically bringing Tuning by James on the channel. We're going to do more of this as we go on. I'm not exactly sure what night we're going to do this. We picked this time tonight because we were both available. And I felt that I wasn't stepping on anybody else because a lot of people are doing this, this StreamYard. And, just as a matter of community, everybody's coming in. You see 6 people on, and we all talk to each other, and that's great. I thought that this was a good opportunity to introduce all you guys to Tuning by James because he's a really great guy. He's a friend of mine, and you can see in the results from my car, and we haven't seen really what my car can do yet. We will, but I owe all of that to James. I got another new face here, Sean Bischofberger. The funny thing is, I knew a kid in high school. His name was John Bischoff. So that's really cool. Thanks for coming in here, Sean. Some other people, Two Valve, like I say, Miles Hiles. Earlier on, when we first got started, those comments aren't here. But my friend Kenny, locally, Pro Street Hustler, was in the stream, and he told me he was here. I don't know if you're still here, Kenny, but thanks for coming in. I appreciate you coming in. And, I can't say it enough how much I appreciate you guys. Street Fox 347, thanks again for coming in. I might stay on. I still see that there's a fair amount of people in here. So if anybody has a question for James, throw it up there. Okay, so Northern Mustang asked a key question. I think I just answered it. How often will James be joining your channel? Guys, this is something that I kind of want to do. I kind of want to bring James on. Yeah. And I encourage you guys to ask some questions because James has got the answers. He's been doing this for a really long time. Like I say, he tuned for SCT. Like James, you were tuning for SEC when Justin Starkey was there, if I'm not mistaken. Justin Starkey from VMP.
No, Justin left SCT right before I started with SCT. So
Okay,
he was, yeah, he had just started his business VMP when I went to work for SCT.
Okay,
So
so
we
as
missed
he
each other by a matter of months. What's
okay,
that?
so he exited just as you came in.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so Northern Mustangs, I plan to bring James on. I'm not that savvy with this StreamYard yet, with letting people know 30 minutes in advance when I'm going live and stuff like that. But I'll probably contact one of you guys to help me figure that out. Somebody asked a question, David Martin. Which is your favorite to tune, the Gen 1, 2, or 3? That's a good question.
Gotta be a Gen 3. You know, every generation has its pros and cons. The Gen 1, I mean, it was a game changer. When they came out with the TI VCT, just tuning a Gen 1 Coyote and with the new parameters that we had available, I mean, there was a lot of stuff going on there. But by today's standards, the Gen 1 just, you've got to do so much to them to get the power out of them. So the Gen 2 was another huge step. They changed a bunch of stuff for the Gen 2. Added IMRCs. I loved the Gen 2 when it came out. There's some issues with the Gen 2, like the IMRCs did have some reliability issues and everything, but I do not recommend deleting the IMRCs. I actually prefer the IMRCs. A lot of the guys out there like, oh, just shut them off, shut them off. No, I like the IMRCs, and if you go to my page, I did a whole write up on why I like IMRCs. I'm not going to get into it tonight, but yeah. And then the Gen 3 with the adding of the direct injection and the 12-to-1 compression, just going to E85 over a 93 octane tune, I'm picking up 30 plus horsepower over 93. I mean, it's crazy the power that you can get out of those cars.
Okay, so Mario's got a question. We're going to get to you, but I'm going to put this question up first. James, what's the word on the N-gage? What's going on with that?
I've heard tons of rumors. I don't want to speculate too much because I don't want to be, the guy who said, so-and-so said that, whatever.
Yeah.
I've heard a bunch of rumors. None of them are great, but in my opinion, because I never really got on the N-gage bandwagon. Everybody was, oh, the N-gage is so much better. The N-gage really didn't do anything more than the SCT-X4 did. It really didn't. The N-gage's claim to fame was it was easier for an end user to just use it. You put the SD card in your computer and you drag and drop your files and it worked. That was cool. And it fit in your AC vent. Okay, that was cool. But other than that, I mean, I never really saw a huge benefit other than it works with HP tuners. But to me, the problem, and not everybody understood this, the N-gage was not an HP tuner's product. It was a third-party device. And I never really liked the idea of, and for what I'm about to say, you got to understand that us tuners, we put a lot of time and effort into our files. So like the first gen, I told you my Lincoln, I spent 4 days on the dyno with it developing a calibration. The first 10-second Mustang, the naturally aspirated 10R80s, I had over 80 hours of development into that tune file. So if I sell somebody a tune and we're charging what, 150, 200 bucks for a mail order tune, and I sell it to somebody, they put it in a car, suck the file out with HP tuners, and now they're selling my file for, it's horrible. It happens in this industry far too often. And the N-gage being a third-party device, I was never happy with the security, because if you want to export an encrypted file, now you've got, not only do they have the encryption protocol, but the company that manufactures the product has the encryption protocol because they have to write the firmware for it. So I never really liked the fact that it was a third-party product. I was really waiting for HP Tuners to come out with their own, which they kind of do, but it's kind of, I don't know. So I'm
All right, wait.
still, yeah, I'm one of the few guys that's still on the SCT bandwagon.
Okay. Now, in my case, I don't even use the N-gage. James just loads his tune into my car from his laptop because he lives not too far. And like I say, I have access to my tuner. There's a lot of good tuners out there. I'm just very, very lucky that the one that I'm working with is close by. He comes to the track with me. He's revised my tunes at the track. I mean, you can't ask for more than that, to have one of the best tuners in the country who's with you.
And that's the difference. We talked very early on about not bashing other tuners, and that's kind of, again, this is the difference between me and the other guys. I don't specialize. I don't do tons of mail order tuning. I don't specialize. I'm the guy that, if you want that more personal touch, where you want that car on the dyno, you want somebody to work on it specifically and get their hands. I mean, like, for example, I don't do any advertising. We're doing this. This is about the extent of my advertising, and I'm booked, I want to say, for the next month straight. I don't have virtually any openings. I mean, it's crazy how busy I am right now. So I'm not out there trying to kill the mail order market. I'm not trying to step on anybody else's toes. I'm here to provide something that is above and beyond what you're going to get from the mail order companies. When you want somebody that's going to spend the time working on just your car.
Speaking of the mail order companies, James and I have had this conversation before. I work with Lund. I have had Lund tunes in my car, and I have friends that use Lund, and Lund is excellent. In fact, there was one time that I was vlogging at a shop, and a local guy here, a friend of mine's name is Chatty. He's got an '07 Mustang that's Coyote swapped. Now, this is a race car. It's a full-blown race car. And he's got twin turbos on it. The car's got forged internals, sleeved. He's got Boss 302 heads on it, so they're the CNC-ported versions. He's got cams in it. He's got a Roadrunner intake, 6466 twin turbos through a 6R80. And John Lund Jr. was a remote tuner in this tuning session, okay? Now, you don't get to talk to John in a case like this. You send him data logs, and he sends you tune revisions. Now, for about 4 hours, this car was on the dyno. I saw 5 tune revisions come in, and I watched the power step up, step up, step up, step up. Now, that is, you can't say anything bad about that. My experience watching that tuning session was a good one. I thought that this was fantastic. If you're in that position and you've got a car like that and you need, professional tuning, you're going to get that from those guys over at Lund. So I have only good things to say about them. Like James says, he and I talk about this. We're not here to bash anybody because those guys are good. Even if you get, a mail order tune. I could just imagine somebody who lives in Montana in the middle of nowhere, parks his car in the garage, changes his intake manifold, puts long tubes on it, puts cams in it, builds this whole thing up. And on the stock calibration, he turns the key and the car won't even run. Okay, so what do? You order up an N-gage from Lund or whatever device you can get from them now, okay? And they're going to send you a base tune that, guess what? You load that in your car's going to run. You can go drive it, you can go data log it, and they're going to give you something that you can work with. So you can't say anything bad about that. And I personally worked with John Lund Jr., and I had a very, very good experience. And I don't want anybody to ever construe anything that we do here as bashing people. In fact, James touched on something that's very, very important that I want to say is that if you're working with a tuner, you got a tuner, and you got a tune in that car, but you're going to switch tuners. You're going to go to another tuner. It doesn't matter who tuner A was or who tuner B is. If you've got tuner A's tune in your car, take that tune out of the car before you turn it over to the next tuner.
Absolutely.
And there's a couple of You could throw your
It's a
stock.
matter of respect for the tuner who originally tuned the car. Even if you're not happy with it, you take the tune file out.
Yeah,
You don't
take it
even
out.
you don't even give the new tuner the opportunity. Hey, I'm not happy with so and so's tune. I want you to tune it. I just did a car recently where it came in with somebody else's tune, and it was actually more difficult because I had to get the car back to a stock file before I could tune a car. I don't, even if it had, if a car comes to me with a tune file and a customer's complaining of something, I don't want to start from that file anyway, because it's more difficult for me to fix a problem with a file than it is for me to start from scratch. So my first step is going to be trying to get a stock file back in the car. So if you bring it to me with a stock file already in the car, great.
That's perfect. That would be the starting point that you want. And so when it comes to tuning, I'm going to be talking about tuning on this channel with James. But by no means do we, neither one of us, I mean, even myself and James, we have no reason to bash anybody. This is just what we do, and this is what we want to talk about. James is available if anybody wants to talk to him. That's his gig. That's how he does things. And that's one of the reasons why I'm kind of bringing him onto my channel to do whatever I can do on this channel for him, because he helped me out a lot. And that's just the way he is. So he could help anybody as best he can. James, Chris Morris, this is your friend. And somebody asked a question about, I think it was Matt Sublime asked a question about the two GT500s that
he's got two 2020 GT500s we're going to be doing, but it's the same. It's typical thing that I get all the time. He's got the cars. The two cars I think are going to go in slightly different directions, and we're going to develop tunes for both of them and have packages available. He wants to offer packages for them, and we're going to be developing the tunes. We just haven't had the time. Number one, they wanted to put the break-in miles and do everything right and whatever. I've tuned cars that were, 3 miles on the odometer when I put them on the dyno, but they want to do the proper break-in procedure and make sure everything's right. And then we're going to go through, develop some packages and develop the tune files. And of course, again, I'm different than some of the other guys out there. I know people are already going stupid fast with those cars, but there's, again, a difference between me and some of the other tuners, because I concentrate more on the person who wants to keep their car as a street car and still go fast. So there's a little difference between the way I approach things and some of the other people approach things that I think will give us a different take and a different. It'll just be worth having a different option in the industry. You want this, you go to that guy. You want this, you come to us, and it'll just be a little different. So
so Mike Stupid Fast Truck asked a question about credits. What do you got to say about these?
When it comes to stuff like that, he's talking about, the 4 credits and tuning the truck. The problem that we run into is if we're doing it in that manner, certain applications I will do, certain applications I won't, from that standpoint, because ultimately, if it's his programmer and his credits, he gets to open the tune file and work with it, and then the stuff to a certain extent is less secure. I don't have control over. If I spend all of this time getting that power and everything, and then he takes that file, and this isn't anything against him in particular, but the way in which the MPVI-2 is a great device. I like it. I like HP tuners, but from a business standpoint, when you do stuff like that, you can, what I was talking about earlier, I spent all this time, and then you take that file out and you start selling it to other people. How do we know? How do we control that? How do I keep that? There needs to be some sort of control on the intellectual property that goes into the tune files. So for some, like the GM and the Dodge stuff that I do, I don't even advertise that I do GM and Dodge. I do so little of them anymore that it's not that big of a deal. But you're coming to me for my experience. You can't steal experience out of my tune file, right? But EcoBoost stuff, you know, there are so many things like cold air kits don't affect the tune, downpipes, you could intercoolers, none of this stuff affects the tune. So you could, so many different modifications. I'm technically giving you the same tune file for a bunch of different. It's hard. I know it sounds bad, but it's hard to explain because the way EcoBoost works is different than Coyote and whatever. So a lot of the modifications you do literally do not require tune changes. They do not affect the tune. So certain things you're not doing anything inside the tune to alter it for these mods. You need to know about the mods. You need to make sure that everything's okay. You need to look at a data log, whatever. But for the most part, yeah, once I develop a tune file for EcoBoost, they're pretty solid. Email them, and I would say 99% of the EcoBoost cars I do are one and done. I send you a tune file, you send me a data log, it's good to go. You're done. It's very rare, and a lot of them they're custom applications. We're doing the MKZ turbo swaps and the 2.7s, the XDI injectors and fuel pumps and stuff like that. Changing the ethanol content. What is Whipple's tune like? Where does it rank based from Whipple 14 GT 2.9? So we're talking about a 14 GT, not a Gen 2 or Gen 3. Whipple is one of those companies, I think I touched on this earlier, but we're 2.25 hours. So we're going to have to start wrapping things up here. I'm getting a little tired. But Whipple, I had to figure the right wording for this because Whipple calibrations are good, okay? They're not perfect, and I think I was touching on this earlier. They have, as a manufacturer, and as they have to do 50 state legal and whatever, so there's certain things that they've got their warranties that they're giving with the kits. They have to do things in a certain way. And one of the things, I actually did a write-up on this. One of the companies I work with, they put a Whipple on a car. It wasn't making the horsepower. They had me come in and custom tune it because Whipple couldn't do it. And it's not because that Whipple doesn't have the experience or the expertise to do it. There's a way in which, if you're a manufacturer like that, you can't just send out custom tunes, right? You can't just look at a data log, make a change, and email a tune, and now you're doing custom tuning for everybody. So the way in which Whipple does things, they develop a calibration on a dyno and they send it out with their kit, and that's the calibration. And if it doesn't work right, okay, well, now we've got to get a vehicle in-house. We've got to verify, because it could be a mechanical issue with the car, could be a tune-related issue, could be whatever. So in this particular instance, it took some custom tuning. But knowing my experience with the Whipple calibrations, this was a Gen 3. But in my experience, this particular car took something different. It wasn't a mechanical issue. It just took more of a custom tune. The problem is Whipple can't do that. They have to develop a tune, get it 50 state certified. They have to do all of this. They've got this whole chain of events that they need to complete before they can release a calibration to the customer. I don't have to. I can take that car and say, okay, well, this is a one-off calibration. I can do this as a one-off calibration. I can do it in a day. I don't have to wait and go through all of these, jump through all of those hoops. I don't think the Whipple calibrations are bad. Like I said earlier, there are a couple of things that I think are big things to change, like the fan temps and whatever. And there's obviously power to be had with custom tuning, but Whipple, they get such a bad rap from, you know, I think most of it stems from having to run the factory fan temps in the cars. I don't necessarily think they're bad calibrations. I like what they do in them. I just think they could be better, and that's what I do, is I custom tweak them for whatever the customer needs and get more power out of it.
Okay, so I mean, I know from experience with my Whipple, I had a very early version of a Whipple Stage 1 tune that went into my car, right?
Yeah.
And it was not a good tune. Now, this is all relative. It was an early version.
It's all relative, yeah.
Yeah, they tweaked that tune a little bit better a little later on down the road, but I broke my motor before I even had a chance to load a new tune in. You know what I mean? A new revision from Whipple. But I left the original tune in, and with once I got the new motor in and the addition of the killer chiller with the original Whipple tune, I went down the quarter mile with my Stage 1, okay, 50 states legal tune, 50 states legal kit at 1059 at 134 miles an hour. And the one thing I regret, was that I didn't try a simple retune on that and just like leaving everything in Stage 1 form and just saying, okay, James, do me a favor, retune this thing, get as much power out of it as you can, and let's see what Stage 1 hardware can do with custom tuning. And I didn't do that. I went right to Stage 2, and I went right for the maximum power, and I kind of left that.
Stage 2 is better than Stage 1, right? Like, you're not going to go Stage 2. The Stage 2 would have been, or Stage 1 would have been nice. But when you look at the Stage 1, you just know that the reason that they're doing that is so that they can run the stock throttle bodies, so that they can get their warranty, and they can get, it's easier to emission certify a car if it's got the stock throttle body and closed air box and yada, yada, yada. So,
all right. I just don't want to interrupt, but some people are coming in and I want to say hello. So Brailford's Rides, thanks for coming in. How's it going? I can't engage in the audience as much as I want to because this is a discussion with tuning by James. But I think at some point James is probably going to click out, and then I can stay on and talk to you guys for a little while. So stick around. We're going to answer a couple more questions, and then I'm going to get back to talking to you guys, okay? So the question is up here, what could you do with a 3.5 EcoBoost? That would be probably an F-150 truck, right?
No, I think that's probably the Lincoln MKS.
There it is right in front of me.
I actually just did one of those recently with an intercooler. I mean, most of those, the Ford Taurus SHO, Lincoln MKS, 2010 to 2000, when did they stop at 19? 18 or 19, they discontinued it. The cars changed in 2013. So you had a 10 through 12 and then a 13 and up. The main difference, they changed the computers in between those years, and the main difference is 13 and up. In order to really make good power, you need to run a 3-bar map sensor.
Interesting.
Obviously, intercoolers are going to help. Anything EcoBoost, the intercooler is the #1 most beneficial thing. Colder spark plugs. Those two things, and the sky's the limit now. Now we can go in there and tune whatever we want. Most of them, I end up around 390 horsepower, 380 to 390 horsepower, and about 475 foot-pounds of torque to the wheels. On pump gas, 93 octane. You wanted to go some blend of ethanol, which I haven't done a ton of ethanol blending on the 3.5s. It's not that I can't, it's just haven't had a whole lot of customers. There's been a few tuners out there that are really popular for the 3.5, so nobody really knows about me tuning the 3.5s. But oddly enough, I've been tuning the 3.5 since it came out in 2010. I was one of the first.
No kidding.
Yeah, it was Beefcake was the first real record holder. And I want to say, God, you're going so far back now. He was running 12.7 at 108 miles an hour or something like that. And our tune that I developed with my old business partner we were going 12.8 at 111. So we were actually running 3 or 4 mile an hour higher than he was. But I think he pulled the seats out of his car or something like that. So he had a better, and he was probably in better weather. So he had a better ET, but we were trapping a much higher mile an hour. But of course, him and then there's other companies that came out. I wasn't doing any kind of advertising or any kind of social media or anything back then. So, you know, I've been doing them. I've done a bunch for other companies. I've done mail order stuff. People have heard of me, but yeah, it never really took off like some of the other shops did. So, but yeah, they're great cars. In fact, when I was looking for the Lincoln, I was very close to getting a Taurus SHO or Lincoln MKS.
All right, so Northern Mustangs asks a very interesting question. When tuning a Coyote with a killer chiller with a bypass valve, is there a different tune required to be used with the bypass valve on or off? In other words,
I assume what he's talking about is to bypass the intercooler or the heat exchanger.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're tuning it, right? And he's got a killer chiller, or you could run it on the heat exchanger, whatever the ambient air temperature is. What would you do in a situation like that?
It depends. Ideally, if I had the car in front of me on a dyno, it would take longer and it would be more expensive to do the dyno tune this way, but I would essentially tune it both ways. I would have the bypass valve on, and then I would turn the bypass valve off, and I would tune it both ways. And I would use the parameters in the tune that deal with what it's dealing with, and I would have the computer automatically adjust for what it's doing. So I would have the ability to optimize the tune file for both conditions. So then you wouldn't need, and I mean, in all honesty, you wouldn't need to change anything really in the tune anyway. You would just say, well, I'm going to race the car with the killer chiller on. And so I would tune the car. I would optimize the car with the killer chiller on, and then just make sure that it's nice and safe with the killer chiller off, and you'd be good to go. There wouldn't be any problems. So.
Okay. So I just want to say hello to this guy, Ford Blue Gauge.
Yep.
What's happening? Thanks for coming in. Some new faces that we see. This guy, somebody I ran into on another live stream. As we all talk to each other, what happens these days with this StreamYard and these other channels is that we all kind of know each other. You know what I'm saying? And it's kind of cool. Like, you know, some people are coming over here to see what we're all about and what we do, you know. Hey, look, I'm Coyote Car Guy for a reason. This was really my whole idea was that I'm into Coyotes. I bought a Gen 3 Coyote in November of 2017. I did a lot with it. I did a lot with James. I can't have a channel that's only about my car. This is the thing. A lot of YouTubers run into this unless they got tons of money to just keep building their car or just keep building another car. I'll do stuff with my car eventually. But a lot of my videos aren't exactly about my car, but in a lot of cases, I have Coyote content working with Tuning by James when I can get over to McDonald Motorsports when he's tuning on, you know, some kind of hot Coyote. Like I was going to go over there last week or the week before. He had a early Cobra, like a 2001 Cobra, I think it was, James, that had it was a 32 valve 4.6 that had a Terminator blower on it, like the blower and intercooler system off the Terminator went onto this 32 valve car. I was going to come out and video it, and I decided not to because I had something else to do that day. But it turned out to be not one of those exciting days. It was more about damage control that day than it was about actually let's make a ton of power out of this. And that's another thing to talk about when it comes to tuning. I see Determined Veteran came into the house. What's happening, brother? I'm glad you came in. But that Cobra You talk to us about that, because that I missed that one. I don't know how that would have done if I made a video of it, but it was an interesting experience.
Everybody, when you go to YouTube and you start watching these videos, everybody gets so hooked on, oh my God, look at this, we're making so much horsepower with this. These videos are typically so edited that they're, they only show every good thing that happened. They don't always show the struggles that you have to fight, or they pick and choose to make it look like a good video. This would have been a great video in terms of showcasing what really happens during an actual event. This was a 03 Mach 1 or an 04 Mach 1 that I tuned years ago. I actually tuned this car years ago. It had a Terminator Eaton swap on it. And as I was retuning the car, I was remembering the first time it came in, it was a basket case. It was a mess. And it was a beautiful car. The car itself was gorgeous. But whoever put that combination together had no idea what they were doing. So we had to fix this, and we had to pull the blower off and pull the thing apart, and it was doing it. We found nuts and bolts in the lower manifold in the intercooler assembly. I'm like, just loose nuts and bolts. I'm like, what the hell is going on here? It was a mess. But when it left,
what's up, brother?
The car was running great. The drivability was beautiful, whatever. So the guy, I want to say he sold it like a year later or something like that. And so Toothless is apparently going to tune the next car. He keeps coming up here. He wants in. No, the owner of the car sold it, and the new owner of the car had no idea what was going on or what was done to it. So like, they had problems with it. They pulled the fuel pump out. They pulled a great fuel pump out and replaced it with something subpar. And they changed the fuel injectors, but didn't retune it for the new fuel injectors. And somebody at some point in its life changed the pulley on the car, and it was making 444 to the wheels. And remember, I said earlier, those motors would only handle 450, right? So somebody put a pulley on it and blew it up because they just went too aggressive with it. So here I am coming into it. Somebody else owned the car, and I'm like, oh my God, I remember this car. It was a cool car. But it turned out that everything, I was just fixing everything all over again. And I think we ended up hitting a wall with it. I think he was running out of fuel pump on the car. So again, the original fuel pump was fine.
Yeah, right.
Replaced the fuel pump with something smaller than what was in the car originally, and it wasn't good enough. So,
you know what that sounds to me like, James? It sounds to me like somebody else bought that car. Okay, you said he blew up the motor and then put another motor in it or whatever it was, and then tried to fix something. Something wasn't right, or it was getting bad advice.
Right. Like, for example, he bought a, I'm trying to data log the car, and it wasn't reading fuel pressure. And somebody put a fuel rail pressure sensor on the car because it was getting low fuel pressure codes. Well, it was getting low fuel pressure codes because the fuel pump was running out, and it wasn't because the sensor was bad. So they put a sensor on it, and they used I think they got it off of eBay or something. It was just a bad sensor. It popped the sensor, or it was bad out of the box or whatever. So now they're like, well, it's still getting the low fuel pressure codes or low voltage codes. They created the problem by trying to chase parts. It's not their fault. I mean, this happens all the time. They don't know. They just know, here's a code. You read on the internet, this is what they say to fix, and that's it.
And they
would have brought the car to me.
Yeah, well, this is kind of what I'm driving at. People up there, you got a modified car. It's obviously not stock. It's got Terminator, hardware on it. You're trying to do something with it, and it's not running right. So instead of bringing it to a tuner, and saying, or providing a data log for the tuner and say, review it, maybe you can help me on that end. Instead, they're changing fuel pumps. They're putting, fuel pressure sensors in there. They're looking for every way by changing hard parts. In the case of the fuel pump, they took out a good fuel pump and put in an inferior fuel pump, not realizing they created their own, more of a problem, like you say, where in the beginning, you're probably better off just going to your tuner and saying, what do I do? Data log it, can you help me? And then go from there, because that's where you get the information as to what direction you should go.
Yeah. In his case, he didn't know who the tuner was. He actually reached out to me and he was like, oh, yeah, rumor has it the car was tuned at this. Well, it's the shop that I tuned for. So I was like, yeah, I remember that car. I tuned it.
The previous owner didn't tell him? I mean, if I bought a car like that, I would want to know. Obviously, it had to have a tune in it. If I bought that car, I wouldn't buy that car without knowing who the tuner was.
Well, I think it was a case of I was tuning the car subcontracted for that shop. So the shop was on the invoice, not me in particular. Does that make sense? So that's another reason that not a lot of people have heard of me, is because I do a lot of work for other shops. So they'll call me up, I'll go out there, I'll tune for them, and then the invoice says that they tuned it when in reality they had me come out and tune it. So that's a lot of what I do. I deal a lot with remote tuning for other shops, and I go out to tune at other shops. So yeah, it's a big part of what I do.
All right, so James, looks like the questions have stopped for tonight.
Yep.
And I'm going to start to engage the audience a little bit. I'm probably going to hang out for another half an hour or so, because my friends come in and I kind of want to talk to them. So
yep, I'm gonna check out here and spend some time with my cats, because apparently they need some attention. All
right. So what we're going to do, guys, is we're going to do this from time to time. This is not going to be a weekly thing, I don't think. I think just from time to time, because James and I talk a lot of times he's got experiences of cars on the dyno, and there's things that we can show you and stuff that we can talk about, some recent experiences. So
I love answering questions. I love, taking the mysticism and taking all the disinformation that there is out there about tuning cars and about how to set them up and whatever. I love, because the last thing I want is for somebody to come in for a dyno tune and have their combination be all wrong and then have me spend all the time trying to fix it. I'd rather just cars show up. He asked me, just go watch this video, this video, this video. Make sure you follow all those. You bring me the car, it's perfect. And we get the car dynoed, we get it tuned, and you're out the door, you're happy, and everybody's happy. So.
All right, man.
Al, I really appreciate it. We'll see who wants to come back and if we want to do this again. So
yeah, we'll do it again. Maybe every other week or something like that. If you got anything going on the dyno that might be video worthy that I can put it up on my channel, we'll talk.
Rumor has it I might have a twin turbo GT350 coming up here pretty soon.
Okay, I'll definitely come out there for that. But that sounds like a car that'll be on the dyno for a couple of days, right?
Most likely, yeah. That's not a 2 revisions and out the door kind of thing.
That's a day. That's a tuning session where I come out for the last day when you make the biggest power.
Yeah. All right.
That'd be interesting. The Determined Veteran is in the house here. He's got a twin turbo GT350 low mount setup. It's got it's making well over 1,000 horsepower. So that's a tough act to follow, James. It should be interesting to see what. Well, it'll depend on what kind of turbo.
This probably won't be a super high horsepower. If it's I don't want to give too much away, but I think the guy road races the car. So it'll be, that's another thing. I deal with a lot of road race cars where you know, it's one thing to go drag racing and be able to go wide open throttle for a quarter of a mile and have the engine hold together. But when you're out there on a road course for hours at a time, it's a completely different level of attention that we need to deal with. So.
All right, James. So we'll catch you later. We'll have James.
Yeah, so I appreciate it, Al. Yep.
All right, man. So we'll see you again another couple of weeks.
All right.
All right.
Sounds
be good.
Good.
Take care.
Thanks, Al. And thanks to everybody who was here. Thanks for all the questions, and look forward to talking to you again. Have a good one, Al.
All right, man. We'll see you later. Take care. Okay, so we're going to get down to hanging out for a little while. I'm going to post a link. Anybody wants to come in. Some of you guys have hung out here for a while. There's still a few people in here. So anybody wants to come in, come on into the basement. We'll talk a little bit about, all right, so Brelford's come in. What's up, brother?
What's up, man?
Nothing much. So you got to meet my team tonight?
Yep. I try and schedule my my MG talks on days that Mustang guys are going, so I don't feel bad when all the Mustang guys come in. I'm like, hey, man, I'm sorry, we're talking British sports cars today.
Yeah. Well, that car, that MG is, personally, I think that's really hot content. You know, there are times that I'll get a car that's an odd car, something different, something that, because I do Mustangs primarily, right? That's what the channel turned out to be. But like I said in the live stream, I can't do videos of my car all the time. I don't work on it that much. I don't do that much with it. So I look for other content. What are you going to do? You throw it up, you know, and I can't always appeal to my subscribers. They might like the different stuff. But then I'm throwing up different stuff that maybe appeals to this broader YouTube viewer market. And you never know what's going to click. You just have no idea. So I just put it up there. Like for example, a year and a half ago, I threw up a video of a Gen 5 Camaro that was on a dyno that had a fast intake on it. It was stroked to 427 cubic inches that made power NA. You know, it had long tubes on it, but it was on 93. And it made something like 510 horsepower or something like that. No blower, no E85. And of course, it made tons of torque because it was a 427. I put the video up, it got 150 views. And then a year later, all of a sudden, everybody wants to see this video. And it starts getting views. You have no idea what's going to happen.
Yeah, that's happening to my dad right now. Like, he does a lot of woodwork and stuff, and he's getting into the epoxy wood turning kind of stuff. And
really?
Yeah, he's getting frustrated. Well, he's not getting frustrated, but he's a lot of the stuff that he thinks is gonna be super popular. Like, nothing happens, and then magically, like 4 months later, videos just randomly take off on him. And so it's weird how that works.
Yeah, you never know. You never know. So I was over at your channel when you had mentioned that car, and I went and looked at it, and just like looking at the spectrum of videos that you have up on the channel, I see the MG. Suddenly, that one's got the one with the views, right? That's the one that I see people looking at.
They look at my most popular videos, the welding the floor pans with a flux core welder. And so I've actually learned that I learned about 2 weeks ago that I've been tagging my videos all wrong, and I probably did myself a huge disservice. I might have already been at 1K well before now if I hadn't done that, but who knows? But like I'm a numbers kind of guy. So in my mind, right, the maximum number of tags you can have, right, or the maximum number of ways you can have tags read out equals more views. So instead of saying like Boss 302 Mustang, I would break it down: Boss tag 302 tag Mustang tag, thinking that the algorithms would automatically like piece it together as it should. Well, apparently I've learned that is 100% wrong, and all that those tags would bring up would be if somebody searched for the Boss or 302. And so I was actually doing myself a huge disservice for a ton of my videos. So I've since been going back and retagging them, and we'll see if any of them ever click, but probably screwed myself there.
How did that work for you with the retagging?
I've just started, man. I won't know probably for a month or two, I'm sure.
Okay. You know, I've never looked at that. You know,
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't really take that that seriously, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
For a while there, when I was racing and building my car, I was like, okay, I was pumping out videos, but really lately, I really don't do all that much. You know, COVID's been keeping me in. I have to be careful to make sure that I don't
man.
get. But it won't be long until we can all get vaccinated and we'll get back to some regular life. But you know,
My exciting.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Go.
No, I just put together whatever I got. You know, there's a dyno shop in town. I recently went to a dyno day, so I got like 3 or 4 videos that I could put together and upload. And there's another shop in town that works on exotics, and so I get some content of Lamborghinis and McLarens. And currently, I'm working on a video of a Koenigsegg, a 2008 Koenigsegg, which actually has a Ford motor in it.
Yeah.
Like James was just talking about a Mach 1 engine, a 32 valve Mach 1 that had Terminator blower on it, the Eaton blower and all the hardware. Well, the Koenigsegg actually has that same engine. It's like an aluminum block 32 valve engine in it. That Koenigsegg changed all the internals. They got a stroke to 4.7 liters, and it's got twin centrifugal superchargers on it, right? That there's 2 of them, and they're upgraded. They're not the standard ones that came with the car. They're upgraded. This thing makes like ridiculous, stupid power, and cars fast as hell. It's like a hypercar. I mean, with 1,200 horsepower, the car cuts through the wind and probably break just about any speed record. I mean, it's a 2008, and it's still formidable to some of the new things that come out. You know, so it's pretty cool. But you know, I just put up what I got, and whatever it is, it is. If it's coyote content, I mean, that's what a lot of people like. But you know, and I just say to anybody, put up whatever you got. Just doesn't matter what it is. Put up. You never.
Well,
know.
I'm excited because last year I was supposed to do autocross for the first time, and that's going to be, for me, that's going to be fun because I'm going to take my kid, my oldest, out there, and he was supposed to run the junior karts that they had out at Cherry Point, and so he was going to be autocrossing basically little go-karts. He was going to be 5 years old. Now he's 6, but he's going to be running about 45, 50 miles an hour in these little go-karts. And
really?
I was more excited to strap the camera to his little cart than I was to run myself. He was so excited for it that I just couldn't wait to like see him out there. And of course, COVID shut it down like a week out, and like he'd been asking me about it for like 3 months. So this year he's already asking me like, "Are we going this year? Are we going?" So I'm waiting. I'm hoping that all works out. I want to get out there and run a little bit, and I'm very eager to see him run. And I think it's. Yeah, I'm gonna strap the camera to him and see how he does.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So anybody else want to come into the basement? I'm kind of hanging around to see who wants to come in. You know, some of you guys.
It's probably Sublime's or Silverback.
Yeah, T Hetzel. I think Silverback might have left. T Hetzel, why don't you come on in? You know, Street Fox, David Martin, why don't you come in, man? Just hang out for a little while before we call it quits. That's really not that late. It's only 11 o'clock. You know, I was on a live stream with Go Fast Nation. Was it last night or the night before?
Yeah, I was too. For a little
bit. Were you there?
For a little while, yeah.
The haters that were coming in, I couldn't believe it. I've never seen anything like that. Really, I've been doing this for like 3 years. Between videos. I mean, I didn't do a lot of live stuff. I'm just kind of doing this again. I probably haven't done it for about a year, and I've never seen haters like that before in my life. I don't understand what these people are thinking, but hopefully they stop doing that. I don't get that kind of stuff.
Yeah, some people just get their jollies making people's lives hell, man. You just gotta ignore them.
Yeah,
that's all you can do. I like to piss people off being overly nice back to them, and that really upsets them. Yeah,
that's pretty much the way I handle it. When because I do have some haters. Oh, we lost you. I have had some haters at times, but you know what? When they come on, I think the thing that they want to do is that they want to piss you off. So you don't let them piss you off. You just try to talk to them nice, and you know what? You just leave it at that.
I hit the back button instead of the X button.
Yeah. So yeah, so I guess the haters is part of it, but I'm fortunate. I don't get that much of it. You know, it was just that day I couldn't believe it. Even Charlie at Go Fast, he couldn't believe it either. The guy's driving in his truck and he's like, "What the heck is this?" You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
well,
what are you working on? You got any projects you're working on? You got something going there?
I do have something going. It's not. I can't really divulge anything. It's nothing huge for my car, but it's going to be a very important video I'm going to film next weekend for myself, and I'm pretty excited about it. I can't really talk much about it because I just can't. Everybody will see it, hopefully.
No, you wait till you get to post your videos. That's what you.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't mind leaking stuff to my the close groups here, but like this is something I can't leak. I'm working on, and it's gonna be good.
All right, cool. All right, so I'll keep an eye on your channel and see what you got posted. But
you're talking about. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I'm just noticing that the comments are getting slow, and we might be calling it a night unless somebody wants to come in.
Ah, man, whatever you got to do.
Yeah. No, but you were going to say something about your car?
Oh yeah, I got a couple projects I got to work on for like my MG though. I got to change out floor pans still. I got to do the rear diff fluid. It's really old. And then my boss, I got to install a trailer harness so I can tow these guys without getting a ticket. So,
oh wow,
yeah,
that's neat.
I pull them. I've already pulled them on the trailer, but you can't see my tail lights all the way. And so I'm just waiting for a cop to give me a ticket instead of usually I get thumbs ups, but I just one day there'll be somebody who doesn't find it so funny and he'll give me a ticket for sure.
Yeah, you don't want that. You don't want to get in trouble. That's the one thing you don't want to do. I know that I'm a magnet for trouble. Like there are a lot of guys around here that like to race on the street, you know, and they'll tell me, "Oh yeah, no, it's cool. We all go out there. We never have any problems. You know, come on out. And this guy wants to race you. That guy wants to race you." You know, if those guys do that every Friday night, the Friday night that I decide to go, that's when somebody will get in trouble. And of all the people who were there, the one person who's going to get in trouble, that's going to be me. It's a story.
I don't mess around like that, man. I can't mess around like that. Like if anything, if that ever got to my line of work, I'd be in some serious trouble. Like I'd be in some big trouble.
Yeah. All right. Well, cool. Thanks for coming in, man. I think we're going to wrap this one up. We've been on for just about 3 hours now, which seems like 15 minutes. It's amazing. It's amazing when you do this, how the time flies. But it's been a good stream. I think we'll probably bring Tuning by James on again in another week or two or whatever. He's got videos of some pretty cool stuff. I'll probably go over there and record some of the stuff he's working on. So we're going to call this one a wrap. Thanks a lot, everybody, for hanging out. And thanks, Brailfords, for coming in. And we'll catch you guys in the next one.
All right. Later, Al.
All right. Have a good night. Have a good night, everybody.